I transmigrated into the most despised piece of trash in the cultivation world, only to find my wife is a peerless supreme empress. For the past 3 years, she has catered to my every whim. Yet I took her devotion for granted, acting with arrogance and pride. I lived a life of debauchery, wantonly offending countless righteous sects. Furthermore, I subjected her to constant humiliation. Everyone assumed I would rely on my wife's status for the rest of my life, but last night, everything changed. To repel the demon race, the Empress sacrificed her entire cultivation, becoming a cripple, lesser even than a mortal. The enemies we once offended immediately surrounded us. Everyone waited to see how ruthlessly I would abandon her. Even the Empress herself, her heart cold and desolate, braced for my betrayal. But they did not know that the soul inhabiting this body had changed. Far from selling out the Empress for riches and status, I did something that left them all in utter disbelief. Just a few days ago, I was clutching my head as it throbbed with excruciating pain, panting, cold sweat drenching my back as a flood of memories was forcibly crammed into my mind. I had transmigrated into this spineless parasitic scoundrel. Before me lay a plaza paved with spirit jade, now riddled with cracks. The air hung heavy with a pungent scent of blood, the grand protective formation of the thousand-year palace reduced to ruin. I cursed inwardly. What kind of hellish beginning was this? The original owner of this body had committed every sin imaginable. Now my greatest source of protection had collapsed. Would those who were once bullied by me not wish to tear me apart? I instinctively raised my head to look at the figure standing in the center of the great hall. She was a woman of breathtaking beauty, yet she appeared profoundly desolate. She was my wife, the Juyo Empress Chuqing. Her white robes were now stained a deep crimson red. Her exquisite face was as pale as parchment. Devoid of color, those eyes that once shone with radiance were now as cold as dying embers. In truth, no one knew that Chu Qingyu was not entirely crippled. If she wished, she could burn her life essence at any moment to return to her peak. But after 3 years of humble sacrifice met only with coldness, her heart had died and she wished only to play the part of a cripple. She wanted to see just how vile I would become once she lost her value to me. If I were to utter words of abandonment, she would reach the state of supreme emotional detachment. At that very moment, a piercing voice shattered the silence. The man who spoke was Zhao Ming, the grand steward of the outer sect, a sycophant who would usually stoop to licking the soles of one's shoes. Yet now, he looked down at me with an expression of unbridled contempt and greed. He laughed maniacally, saying, "Sung Yu is no better than a mortal now. The two great sects from down the mountain have joined forces and are about to lay siege to the hall." He pulled out a storage bag and ordered me to bind Su Qingyu with my own hands. He claimed that if I handed her over, he would not only spare my pathetic life but also reward me with spirit stones. The remaining disciples in the hall all turned their gazes toward me. They were certain that a coward like me would choose to betray the Empress. High upon her throne, Su Qingyu's eyelids fluttered slightly. She stared at the floor, her immense spiritual power held in check. Her energy was poised to erupt in a backlash, waiting only for me to plead for my life before she tore through all this deception. But as time passed, the sound of my begging never echoed through the hall. Seeing this, Zhao Ming let out a cold laugh, impatiently telling me to stop pretending to be deeply affectionate. He stepped forward with arrogance, reaching out to grab my shoulder, but before he could finish his sentence, I swung my hand in a fierce slap. A crisp sound, sharp as a thunderclap, rang out through the great hall. Like a kite with a snapped string, Zhao Ming was sent flying by my blow, crashing violently into a ruined pillar. The entire hall fell into a deathly silence. Everyone stared in utter disbelief. Even Su Qingyu, who had been bracing herself for betrayal, looked up in astonishment. I gazed at the crumpled form of Zhao Ming on the floor with the eyes of someone looking at a corpse. What kind of thing do you think you are, daring to point your finger and shout at my woman? I turned around and under the weight of countless shocked stares, I ascended the cold stone steps to stand before Su Qingyu, witnessing her tragic state. It was heartbreaking for any man to see such a peerless beauty brought so low. My heart instinctively constricted with overwhelming sorrow. Su Qingyu braced herself, believing I had come to bind her. A cold smile curled upon her lips, but the very next moment, I gently removed my ice silk cloak, a supreme-grade treasure, and draped it steadily and tenderly over her cold, fragile shoulders. Feeling a warmth she had long since lost, she stood as if struck by lightning, frozen in place. She stared up in a daze at my face, which was filled with both resolve and gentleness. I leaned in slightly and spoke in a voice meant only for the two of us to hear. "In the past, I was a scoundrel who failed to protect you well. But from this day forth, as long as I, Yuan, have a single breath left, no one shall dare to lay a finger on a hair of my wife." These words struck Su Qingyu's heart like a heavy blow. The golden divine light meant to destroy the heavens and earth was suddenly extinguished. She bit her lower lip hard, her eyes turning red with unshed tears. Her heart, which had long since withered, skipped a beat in profound shame. At that exact moment, a manic, deafening laughter erupted from outside the main hall. A terrifying pressure belonging to a golden core stage expert descended upon the hall. An elder of the blood slaughter sect led his men inside, reeking of killing intent. He declared that he would send our star-crossed pair down to the Yellow Springs together. The intense bloodlust immediately locked onto me, a mere chi-refining trash. But I did not retreat. I took a deep breath, shielded her behind me, and instinctively grabbed a broken bronze candle holder. Having spoken those words, "Even if I must die, I will die standing before her." Behind me, Chutan Wet, wrapped tightly in a cloak, gazed at my back, not particularly broad, perhaps even thin. Within my body, a drop of golden essence blood burned silently in my meridians. Just then, the full force of the Golden Core expert's pressure crashed down. To a fledgling like me in the chi refining stage, this pressure was akin to the heavens collapsing and the earth splitting asunder. Elder Tiet Loy of the Blood Slaughter sect sneered as he stepped into the hall. With every step he took, the high-grade spirit jades beneath his feet shattered, and the thick, crimson murderous aura manifested into a gale that swept through the hall. The remaining silk ribbons were instantly shredded to pieces. I bore the brunt of the assault. It felt as if a mountain had been placed upon my back. The chi in my body was instantly suppressed by this overwhelming force, and the sound of cracking bones echoed from my knees under the immense strain. The excruciating pain drained every drop of color from my face. Cold sweat poured down my spine like a waterfall, yet I gritted my teeth and braced the bronze candle holder against the floor. Even as my legs trembled violently, I stood firm and refused to kneel. Not only did I refuse to kneel, but I pulled Tonwit further behind me, shielding her completely without a single gap. A flicker of surprise flashed in Tight Loy's cloudy, aged eyes, which quickly morphed into a look of mocking contempt. He found it truly ridiculous that a piece of trash clinging to a woman's skirts would dare to play the protector. It was truly the most laughable sight under the heavens. A disciple clad in blood-red robes leaped forward, his cultivation base revealed. His foundation establishment realm was displayed without reservation, and with a look of disdain, he drew his longsword, pointing it straight at my heart, threatening to kill me in one strike and feed my corpse to the wild dogs. Chu Thiet, shielded behind me, lowered her gaze. Her fingertips beneath the cloak had already begun to condense the laws. This golden flow of laws was enough to cause the very heavens and earth to change color. She understood all too well how vast the chasm between major cultivation realms truly was. At this moment, I was nothing more than a chi refiner. With just a single surge of sword chi, the opponent could reduce me to mere shreds. She mocked herself internally, thinking it was already a miracle that I had even stepped forward. She surmised that my next move would be to beg for mercy or to be struck down by a single sword stroke. If this laughable life were to end, she was surprised to find that the thought of my death actually filled her with distress. Even if she had to endure the backlash of the 10,000 arrows piercing the heart technique, she would strike. She would never allow these insignificant pests of the Blood Slaughter sect to run rampant here. Yet, at the very moment she intended to break her seal, I suddenly let out an arrogant laugh at the enemies before us. I slowly lifted my head, my face still stained with Zhao Ming's blood, a madness in my eyes that sent shivers down the spine. If you wish to lay a finger on her, you must first step over my corpse. With those words, I performed an astonishing feat. I neither retreated nor assumed a defensive stance. Instead, I let out a furious roar. Gripping the heavy bronze candle stand with both hands, I lunged straight toward the blade of the Foundation Establishment disciple. The opponent flew into a rage, convinced that a mere chi-refining weakling like me was truly courting death. How dared a chi-refining cultivator brandish a weapon against one in the Foundation Establishment stage? He flourished his longsword, blooming a cold, lethal sword flower that drove straight for my chest. Suo Qingyu's pupils constricted. She prepared to unleash her power instantly. But just as the tip of the blade was about to pierce my heart, I executed a ruthless, desperate maneuver. Like a street thug's gutter tactics, I advanced instead of retreating. In a fraction of a second, I shifted my body violently, causing the cold blade to miss my heart and pierce through my left shoulder instead. Fresh blood instantly dyed my robes red, and the pain caused my vision to dim. Yet this trade of injury for injury was exactly the outcome I desired. As the longsword passed through my body, I stepped forward, the blade grinding against bone and flesh with a sickening sound. This maneuver allowed me to bridge the lethal distance between us. Foundation Establishment disciple was completely stunned, having never witnessed such a savage fighting style. This was clearly the desperate mutual destruction tactic of a street-level ruffian. He intended to withdraw his sword and retreat, but it was already too late. With the blade still embedded in my left shoulder, my right arm bulged with strained veins as I swung the heavy bronze candle stand, tearing through the air. A dull, heavy impact echoed through the great hall, accompanied by the distinct sound of shattering bone. The opponent's protective spiritual light was obliterated by my strike, and he was sent flying backward like a broken heap of mud, his life hanging in the balance. The entire hall fell into a deathly silence, punctuated only by the sound of my blood dripping onto the floor. Against all reason, I had used the reckless tenacity of a mortal to gravely wound a cultivator across ranks. This brutal, savage style of combat overturned everything they knew. Elder Shuali of the Blood Slaughter sect roared in fury. He felt that having a Golden Core disciple felled in the blink of an eye was an utter, stinging humiliation. Enraged to the point of madness, he raised his hand to manifest a colossal blood palm, bearing an aura of absolute destruction. As it descended upon me, I knew that faced with the strike of a Golden Core cultivator, I was truly finished. I offered a bitter smile. Truly, the role of a hero saving a damsel is far from easy. Yet I did not turn back. Instead, I spread my arms wide to shield Thong Yit, bracing myself to absorb the brunt of the shockwave with my own flesh. At the very moment the blood-red hand was about to crush me, Su Thongwet gazed at my back, a myriad of complex emotions flickering within her. She even felt a pang of sorrow she was unwilling to admit. Finally, she quietly pointed a finger into the void. A golden ripple tore through space, colliding with the core of the blood-red hand. Amidst the air, the savage hand disintegrated instantly, scattering into a mist of blood that filled the hall, completely shattered. A terrifying backlash of force slammed into Tai Li's chest, causing him to vomit blood. He retreated over a dozen steps, his eyes filled with horror, never suspecting that the woman he deemed useless had acted. He merely assumed the Grand Hall's lingering formation had activated its defense. Observing the chaotic turbulence of spiritual energy, his expression shifted erratically. Tai Li cast a wary glance in our direction before grinding his teeth and retreating. He intended to wait for the formation's spiritual energy to exhaust itself before returning to settle the score. With the crisis averted, silence returned to the Grand Hall. The traders, fearing they might be ensnared by the formation, fled in a panic. The heavy candelabra in my hand finally slipped and clattered to the floor. My back hunched immediately. The wounds were horrifying, with blood staining half my body a deep crimson. I gasped for air, my vision darkening as I struggled to remain standing, yet I forced myself to turn and face her. Seeing her stunned expression, I noticed a drop of blood had splashed onto Suthan Yuet's face. She looked desolate yet beautiful. Suppressing the agonizing pain, I stumbled toward her, my trembling hand clumsily wiping away the stain. Though I managed a wretched smile, my eyes burned with intensity. I promise to protect you. As long as I draw breath, no one shall dare to bully you. Before I could finish my words, I collapsed into her arms. Suthan Yuet instinctively reached out to hold me tight. My body felt heavy, reeking of fresh blood, which stained her undergarments and stirred a burning sensation in her heart. Never had she imagined someone would use their own flesh to shield her, least of all the trash she had despised. Tears fell from her eyes, landing upon my cheeks. Afterward, she surveyed our surroundings, her gaze turning cold and profound. With a delicate finger, she touched my wounds, invoking the laws of life. The deep, bone-exposing injuries began to mend miraculously. However, she was remarkably cautious, choosing only to heal my internal injuries while leaving the external wounds untouched. Once finished, she resumed her facade of fragility. She draped my arm over her shoulder, guiding me toward the secret passage behind the mountain as the cold wind whipped through her disheveled hair. Gazing at my unconscious face, the corners of her lips curled upward in a faint smile. She claimed she wanted to perform a display of deep affection, so she granted me the opportunity to demonstrate my devotion. She wanted to see just how long this mortal shell of mine could endure for her sake. The night rain poured relentlessly as a gale roared, driving freezing droplets ruthlessly into the dilapidated mountain god shrine. I struggled to open my heavy, weary eyelids, only to feel as if every bone in my body had been dismantled and reassembled. In particular, the wound piercing my left shoulder caused agonizing pain with the slightest movement. Struggling, I managed to sit up to observe my surroundings. The statue on the altar had long since peeled away, and the cold wind whistled through the tattered curtains. Somehow I had survived that gambit. That death trap. It seems the resonant reflection array had saved my life. I took a deep breath, looking at my blood-stained hands, and offered a self-deprecating smile, harboring no suspicion toward the wife beside me. I turned my head toward the pile of hay beneath the altar. Shu Qingyu was curled into a small ball, wrapped in my blood-soaked coat. Her golden hair was disheveled, obscuring the side of her deathly pale face. Seeing the once invincible empress reduced to this state filled my heart with an indescribable bitterness. I gritted my teeth, suppressing the agony, and kindled a fire from the rotted wood in the corner. The flickering flames dispelled the chill within the shrine. I removed the only undergarment I had left, warmed it by the fire, and gently approached her to cover her with it, carefully tucking in the edges. I gazed at her sleeping face and whispered a promise. Tomorrow morning, I will descend the mountain to find work and buy medicine for you. At that moment, I did not realize that Shu Qingyu had awakened, her profound eyes reflecting my trembling back. She looked at the old garment, warmed by my own body heat, feeling an unprecedented sense of panic and warmth. She wondered with complex emotions what exactly I was plotting. If this was merely a ruse to garner pity, the price paid was far too great. She suddenly found herself unable to bring herself to strip away my facade. Just then, the door of the shrine was kicked open with brutal force. 3 vicious-looking rogue cultivators strode in with an air of arrogance. They were common outlaws who made their living by murdering and robbing in these lands. The scarred leader stared fixedly at Shu Qingyu's face, his eyes flashing with the greed of a starving wolf. Her peerless beauty left the 3 cultivators stunned. The thin one recognized me as the skirt chaser from before. He laughed, proclaiming that swan meat had delivered itself to their mouths. Since the empress had become a cripple no better, the feeling of being the husband of an empress. The scarred man drew his broadsword, pressing closer to me with every step. Cold, void-freezing killing intent flickered in the eyes of Suthan Yuet. Such mere insects dared to utter insults against her. Beneath her sleeves, her fingertips silently gathered the power of laws. With a single thought, she could erase these 3 from existence. Just as she was about to flick her finger to end their lives, I, despite my grave injuries, shielded her once again. Standing before her, I reached out and snatched a burning wooden branch, pointing it toward them, my voice radiating a terrifying feral intensity, my gaze so manic it seemed as though I would tear flesh from bone, causing Suthan Yuet, who was prepared to strike, to pause, a powerful unfamiliar urge to be protected blooming within her heart. These 3 scraps of vermin dared to threaten her man. Other than her, no one had the right to make me shed another drop of blood. She silently retracted her destructive laws, instead gripping the hem of my robes, her voice trembling as she called out, "Husband, I am afraid." A surge of burning resolve rushed to my head. Though I could not defeat them, I absolutely would not retreat again. I comforted her, telling her to close her eyes, for it would all be over soon. Gripping the wooden branch, I roared and charged toward the scarred man. The scarred man grinned, swinging his blade down toward my head. Weakened by my severe wounds, I could not dodge in time. Just as the broadsword was about to strike my forehead, Chuthon standing behind me, whispered a single word, bind. The command manifested as a spell. The very heavens and earth shuddered, the ground sinking strangely, forcing the scarred man to his knees. His head slammed hard against the earth and he fell unconscious instantly. Still clutching the charred branch, I stood there, dumbfounded. The skinny rogue cultivator, enraged, launched a dozen venom-tipped flying needles. Chuthon behind me lazily uttered one word, shatter. A strange gust of wind blew, reversing the needles and sending them back along their path. The skinny man shrieked before falling dead on the spot. The final portly cultivator was so terrified he soiled his robes. Thinking he had encountered a nascent soul powerhouse feigning weakness to prey on tigers, he kowtowed frantically before fleeing the ruined temple. The temple returned to absolute silence. I stood there, wooden branch in hand, lost in a daze for a long time. I could not believe what had just transpired. I held up my hands, inspecting them repeatedly, thinking to myself, could my transmigrated golden finger have finally arrived? This must be the legendary Haki, even the wind itself obeys my command. I puffed out my chest, feeling the agony of my wounds begin to subside. I patted Chuthon on the shoulder and declared, my lady, fear not, with me here these wretched villains shall never lay a hand upon you. They were already crushed beneath the weight of my aura just moments ago. Chuthon eyes brimmed with tears as she gazed at me, filled with adoration. She suppressed a smile, playing along with my grand display, while I hummed a tune and dragged the corpses outside. The facade of weakness vanished from Chuthon face in an instant. She stood, and the sheer pressure of her presence suppressed even the flickering flames. With her jade-like fingers, she crushed the tracking bone fragment, and from 100 miles away she coldly vowed to eradicate the blood sect by dawn. This was the price to be paid for daring to touch her man. Even if I were nothing but a piece of trash, I belonged to her alone. She wished to see how much blood this mortal vessel could shed for her, and she was curious to see what other grand theatrics my philosophy would produce. At dawn, I awoke in the abandoned temple, discovering that the wounds covering my body had miraculously scabbed over. Looking at my beautiful wife sleeping soundly by my side, I resolved to challenge the entire blood sect for her sake. I gathered not only the poison needles of the cultivators but also prepared crude, handmade explosives. After 2 hours of sprinting to the blood sect's base, I stood frozen in shock. The sky-piercing mountain that once stood there, along with the entire sect, had completely vanished, replaced by a massive crater. It was a bottomless pit stretching for dozens of miles. I gaped in disbelief, wondering if the heavens themselves had merely sneezed. Could it be that last night I hadn't just awakened my hegemon's aura but also a karmic attack? Was it possible that a mere passing thought had caused an entire third-rate sect to vanish into thin air? Far from being afraid, I wanted to look up to the heavens and roar at my own magnificence. I even casually picked up the master's high-grade storage ring. Little did I know that all of this was the work of my wife, my useless wife who had been secretly aiding me. With a single wave of her hand, she had reduced Blood Spirit Peak, some 800 miles away, to nothingness. When I returned to the temple, gleefully boasting of my single-thought sect annihilation miracle, she continued to act, feigning absolute admiration for me. Just then, a master from the Heaven Extremity Sword sect arrived at our doorstep, bellowing for our lives. To understand this, one must first look at my startling ability to recover. Early in the morning, outside the dilapidated mountain god temple, the chirping of birds shattered the silence. I snapped my eyes open, springing up like a vigilant hunting leopard. Instinctively, I reached for the half-burnt log I had used as a weapon the night before. And only after confirming that no immediate danger was approaching, did I finally loosen the nerves I had kept coiled in tension. The deep bone-piercing wound on my left shoulder had formed a thick scab by today. Even swinging my arm caused little discomfort. It was truly incredible, and I found myself pondering the restorative capabilities of this body. Shortly thereafter, I attributed everything to the hidden golden finger that had awakened the previous night. If this power could manifest words into reality, then what was mere physical healing in comparison? As this thought crossed my mind, the corners of my mouth curled upward. I felt as though I were on the verge of becoming invincible. I turned my head to look at Chuthon, who was sleeping upon a pile of hay in the corner of the shrine, as the chilly morning light filtered through the dilapidated roof, casting a glow upon her exquisitely perfect profile. This scene resembled a princess in slumber, causing a surge of determination to swell within my heart. The appearance of the cultivators last night had sounded a grave alarm. This place was merely 800 miles from the Nine Nether Palace. The enemy could descend upon us at any moment. Men from the Bloodslaughter sect and the Heavenly Pole Sword sect were surely already scouring this mountain. If my golden finger were to flicker or fail while encountering an old monster, and my golden core were to become trapped, everything would be ruined. The survival instincts of a modern man told me that the best defense is a strong offense. The old golden core dog from the Bloodslaughter sect had struck me yesterday with enough force to nearly shatter my bones. Today I would present them with a gift of such magnitude that they would never forget it. I stood up stealthily and approached the corpses of the two rogue cultivators, suppressing my nausea to search their bodies. I retrieved a dozen poison-tipped flying needles and a fair amount of toxic powder, and I even fashioned several hardened, sharpened stakes behind the shrine to use as traps. I glanced back at the sleeping Thonwet and whispered, "Your husband will return shortly." With that, I turned decisively and stepped into the thick white morning mist, intending to seek toward the perimeter of the Bloodslaughter sect's base, using my modern knowledge to craft improvised explosives. If I could fell a few of the patrol disciples to sow chaos, it would surely delay their mountain-wide search. Yet I remained unaware that the moment I departed she opened her eyes. Her gaze, deep as an abyss, was filled with absolute clarity. She rose lazily, ignoring as my outer robe slid off her shoulder, revealing a patch of porcelain-white skin. She looked in the direction I had gone, a cold, arrogant, yet helpless smile gracing her lips. From the moment I declared my intent to protect her last night, the blood slaughter sect had already become, in her eyes, a pile of corpses. The person whom the Empress wishes to protect, even should an immortal venerable from the upper realm descend, would surely perish. She rose slowly, her bare feet pressing against the cold earth, and she raised a slender finger to point toward the towering, sky-piercing peak of the blood slaughter sect. 800 miles away, she decided that her man only needed to stand back and watch the show. That piece of trash does not even possess the qualifications to stand in her presence. No sooner had she finished speaking than she flicked two fingers, tracing a casual line through the air. There was no earth-shattering explosion, nor was there any deafening roar. There was only a golden streak of sword energy, thin as a strand of hair, that erupted from the desolate temple and traversed 800 miles in an instant, slicing through the mountain like the scythe of death. Having finished, she did not even spare a glance at the outcome, settling back into the hay to resume her slumber. As for me, I had been running for 2 hours, drenched in sweat. Relying on the memories of the original owner, I had neared the blood slaughter sect, my heart racing as I rehearsed countless plans to ambush their patrol guards. Yet as I drew closer, I felt a grotesque silence. The forest, once teeming with the songs of birds, was now devoid of all sound. Let alone the patrol guards, I could not even find a single wild rabbit. A faint, suffocating scent of scorched earth hung in the air as if the very world had been cast into a furnace. I swallowed hard, tightened my grip on a piece of wood, and cautiously poked my head out to look. But the sight before me left me paralyzed, as if struck by a lightning bolt. The wood fell from my hand. I gasped, my eyes bulging in disbelief. What had become of the blood spirit sect? Where was the magnificent architectural complex of the sect? Before me lay only a vast flattened crater spanning dozens of miles. The entire mountain, along with the very crust of the earth, had been utterly erased by a sword strike of heaven-splitting proportions. In that pit there were no corpses, no ruins, not even a trace of blood. Under the immense heat and terrifying destructive laws of that strike, several thousand cultivators had been vaporized into nothingness. The stones at the bottom of the crater had been crystallized, reflecting a chilling light. The lingering golden sword intent caused my soul to tremble incessantly, even from 10 miles away. I collapsed to the ground, my mind completely blank for a full half-minute. I wondered whether this was a natural disaster or the result of some celestial being passing by and engaging in a battle. Suddenly, an absurd yet strangely logical thought flashed through my mind. Last night, when confronting those cultivators, an intense killing intent had surged within my heart. At that moment, I had cursed those blood slaughter sect scoundrels, wishing for their total extermination. Could it be that I had awakened not just an aura but a divine ability capable of manifesting my words into reality? That with a mere stir of emotion, my subconscious command could annihilate a sect in a single thought? I leaped to my feet, laughing wildly through the mountains and forests. I knew it. How could a transmigrator be nothing more than a talentless chi condensation weakling? As it turns out, I am a supreme expert wielding a passively activated weapon of causality. Those blood slaughter sect members truly could not withstand a single curse. I had only thought of it in passing, and they had already been wiped from existence. At this moment, I was completely lost in my own delusion, convinced that this power was my own. Bravely, I approached the edge of the crater and saw a blood-red ring resting upon a large boulder. Having served such a devastating attack, it was surely a divine artifact left behind. This must be the blood spirit ring of the blood demon sect master. It surely contains countless treasures. I picked up the ring, wiped the dirt onto my clothes, and felt an exhilarating surge of triumph in my heart. This legacy of an entire sect would certainly be enough to trade for the potent medicine needed to treat my wife's wretched illness. I wiped the arrogant, reckless expression from my face and turned to sprint toward the abandoned temple as fast as I could. Gasping for air, I burst into the temple and loudly asked Chuthon White if she had awakened yet. She feigned weakness, asking me where I had been, claiming she was terrified. In my excitement, I grasped her delicate hands, puffed out my chest with the air of an absolute hegemon, and told her that from this day forward, she need not fear any longer, for I had awakened a supreme divine ability. Without batting an eye or showing a hint of hesitation, I claimed that last night, with a single thought, I had annihilated the entire blood demon sect. Now that place was nothing more than a massive crater, and every one of those villains had been reduced to ashes by my hand. Seeing me boast so brazenly, Chuton Wit chuckled to herself, though on the surface she still feigned awe and admiration. She praised me, saying, "My husband is truly formidable," and I generously slammed the blood-red storage ring onto the pile of dry hay to show it off to her. Yet how could a mere chi-refining practitioner like me possibly break the seal left by a golden core cultivator? Just as I was so mortified I wished the ground would swallow me whole, she intervened from the shadows. With a gentle stroke, she erased the restriction and acted as if the ring had never been locked at all. I let out a sigh of relief, convinced that the ring must have been damaged by my own peerless aura. Just as one person was putting on a grand performance, and the other was frantically grandstanding, a sound echoed from outside, a rhythmic series of footsteps accompanied by a sharp, biting sword intent. An aura of overwhelming righteousness surged toward us. An expert from the punishment hall of the heavenly pole sword shouted from outside, ordering us to crawl out and pay with our lives. My triumphant expression instantly froze. Meanwhile, a bone-chilling killing intent flickered in Chuthan Nuiyet's eyes within the darkness. The Heavenly Pole Sword sect dared to arrive and ruin her performance at such a moment. Since they had come seeking their own deaths, she would not blame herself for engaging in a massacre today. The punishment hall of the Heavenly Pole Sword sect is here. Demonic cultivators inside, get out here and surrender your lives at once. The cold, arrogant shout, laced with sword intent as sharp as lightning, thundered outside the dilapidated mountain god temple. The already wobbling wooden doors shattered into pieces instantly. The light drizzle outside the temple had ceased, though no one knew when. 8 cultivators dressed in white sword robes hovered in the air, perched upon their flying swords. The elder in the lead possessed silver hair and a white beard, with an ancient sword emitting a violet glow strapped to his back. He was none other than Jian Wuwen, the first elder of the Punishment Hall of the Heavenly Pole Sword sect, possessing the cultivation of a half-step nascent soul realm expert. At this moment, his expression was grave. Even the hands he held in a sword seal were trembling. Just half an incense stick of time ago, he had witnessed with his own eyes the total annihilation of Blood Spirit Peak, a law of destruction that treated all living things as mere blades of grass. This was undoubtedly the work of a supreme existence far surpassing the nascent soul, perhaps even the spirit-severing realm. They had followed a faint, lingering aura in the air to track it to this location. I had been ecstatic just moments ago, reveling in the acquisition of the storage ring. Upon hearing the 4 words Heavenly Pole Sword Sect, my expression momentarily stiffened, but rather than succumbing to fear, the corners of my mouth curled upward. A look of manic excitement flashed through my eyes. Was this not a bag of experience delivered to my doorstep by the heavens, perfect for me to test my skills? Even the blood slaughter gate had been eradicated by my sheer will. What was there to fear from these mere sword cultivators? I took a deep breath, slid the blood spirit ring onto my thumb, and turned to offer Chu Qingyu a smile that was confident, yet perhaps a bit mischievous. Wife, remain here and watch as your husband puts on a performance to repel these invaders. Chu Qingyu watched my swaggering gait, the corner of her eye twitching. Does this fool intend to face a half-step nascent soul expert with his chi-refining cultivation? A single strand hint from the opponent would leave him shattered into dust. But when she noticed blood seeping from my left shoulder due to the sudden strain of movement, the mockery in her eyes vanished in an instant, replaced by a chilling aura. Hidden within the shadows, her eyes shifted to a deep, piercing gold. With my hands clasped behind my back, I walked with a bold, steady stride, stepped across the temple threshold, and raised my head to glance at Jian Wuwen in the sky. I gave a soft huff, and one of the sword sect disciples blurted out, "Is this not that good-for-nothing Lu Yuan who relies on a woman to survive?" He arrogantly demanded that I bring Chu Qingyu out. Hearing the term good-for-nothing, my gaze turned instantly icy. However, before I could speak, Jian Wuwen's eyes were already locked onto the ring on my finger. He felt as if thunder had roared inside his mind, his entire body jolted as if struck by lightning, and he staggered, nearly losing his footing. That was the blood spirit ring of the Blood Slaughter Gate sect master, Shibushu, a true expert in the early nascent soul realm. And yet it was now in the hands of the Jian Wugen roared inwardly, certain that this man was a creature of immense cruelty. How could the Wu Empress possibly favor a mere ant at the chi refining stage? Unless, of course, this ant was a true dragon playing the pig to eat the tiger. For the past 3 years, he must have been manipulating the entire world from the palm of his hand. The Bloodthirst sect must have been wiped out in a single thought for offending him. He did not even bother to change his clothes, calmly retrieving the sect master's storage ring. Overthinking is truly a lethal psychological affliction. Even one as powerful as a half-step nascent soul expert becomes as fearful as a bird startled by a fallen twig. Just as Jingan spiraled into a panic of wild speculation, Chu Qingyu inside the temple unleashed a surge of pressure with pinpoint precision. This wave of pressure descended like an ancient divine mountain, crushing down upon their souls. The elite disciples behind Jian Wugen immediately spewed blood, collapsing into the mud like flies with broken wings. Their bones shattered throughout their bodies under the terrifying weight. Jian Wugen felt his own nascent soul trembling before this overwhelming might. It felt as though a single thought from the opponent would scatter his soul into oblivion. He was certain this must be a true immortal far surpassing the level of a spirit-severing expert. In truth, my own heart was racing with terror at this moment. I had not even managed to shout for him to get lost. Why had he already coughed up blood and collapsed? Could it be that my overlord's haki has evolved to the point where a mere glance can kill? Though I was jubilant inside, I maintained an expression of unfathomable profundity. I stood upon the steps looking down at Jian Wugen from on high, and raised my hand to brush away a speck of dust that did not even exist on my ring. I spoke slowly. I asked, who was it that just spoke so boldly, demanding I surrender my life? Simultaneously, Chu Qing secretly intensified her spiritual pressure, causing the arrogant Jian Wugen to lose all strength in his legs. He knelt down with impeccable fluidity into the mud, tears streaming down his face as he frantically kowtowed for mercy, wailing that his eyes had been blinded by greed, leading him to offend an immortal, and begged me to show mercy to their ancestors and spare them, as if forgiving a mere passing wind. The remaining disciples, seeing their elder kneeling, hurriedly followed suit, frantically pleading for their lives. Their miserable wails echoed throughout the desolate mountains. Seeing these grand masters weeping like dogs, I felt an immense sense of satisfaction. Is this the ultimate pleasure of an invincible system transmigrator? Standing here, even a nascent soul-old monster must humble himself before me. I suppressed my urge to laugh, deliberately keeping a cold, stern expression, and let out a cold harumph. I told them, it is not impossible for me to spare you, but while death may be avoided, penance is mandatory. My wife's physical state is fragile at the moment. She requires someone by her side to attend to her needs. Though your cultivation bases are nothing but trash, you still possess some measure of strength. I pointed toward Jian Wugen and declared, from this day forth, you shall serve as my carriage driver. As for the rest of you, you are responsible for carrying our belongings and acting as gatekeepers. Should my wife suffer even the slightest jolt, I shall ensure the Sword Sect follows in the footsteps of the Blood Slaughter Sect. Upon hearing he was to be a driver, Jian Wugen felt not a shred of humiliation, but rather an overwhelming joy at having escaped death. To serve as a driver for the peerless expert who eradicated the Blood Slaughter Sect was, in itself, a grand fortuitous encounter. It was truly the grace of his ancestors that he had cultivated enough merit to earn this blessing. He kowtowed repeatedly, like a man possessed, swearing he would prepare the most extravagant horse-drawn carriage in the world. With an arrogant wave of my hand, I granted him half an incense stick of time to prepare. The group of experts fled down the mountain as if being hunted by wild dogs. Satisfied, I dusted off my hands and strolled back to the dilapidated shrine with a cocky swagger. I told Chu Qingyu that I had dealt with those ignorant fools. They were so terrified by my aura as a supreme expert that they insisted on becoming my bodyguards. Seeing me act with such towering arrogance, Chu Qingyu nearly burst into laughter. It was clearly I, the Empress, who had secretly acted to shatter their bones. This fool is only good at standing in front and posturing, performing all sorts of theatrics, yet upon seeing the blood stain on my left shoulder, the anger in her heart vanished entirely. She shifted with practiced ease into her role as a devoted wife, feigning weakness as she praised my prowess, while pretending to worry that the orthodox sects might cause trouble along the way. I let out a cold laugh, pulled her into my arms with a domineering air, and struck my chest in assurance. Before absolute power, all schemes are nothing but paper tigers. Feeling the warmth of my chest and my sincere desire to protect her, her stiffened body slowly began to relax. She thought to herself, if you wish to play the role of the invincible master, I, the Empress, shall play along with you. Should any sect in this world dare to provoke you, I shall force them all to their knees. Half an incense stick later, an incredibly luxurious horse-drawn carriage pulled to a halt before the entrance. It was crafted from thousand-year-old auger wood, drawn by 4 Foundation Establishment stage violet copper-cloud leopards. Jian Wugen had changed into coarse cloth robes and, fawning like a docile old hound, lifted the carriage curtain. Extremely pleased, I picked up Chu Qingyu, brought her into the carriage, and issued my command with great intensity. Our destination is Heavenly Peak City. This strange alliance, consisting of a mortal feigning to be a supreme expert and a hidden empress acting as his protector, began their journey. The peculiar duo, a mortal playing the part of a master and an empress protecting him, set out on the road. The lavish carriage, built from millennium-old augerwood, moved smoothly and silently along the imperial highway. The 4 purple-eyed cloud leopards were so suppressed by the sword intent that they dared not even growl, hiss, huff. Zakiem Vongan was cracking the horsewhip, playing the role of the most devoted tyrant. While driving, he shouted, "Move aside, all who are uninvolved. Do not disturb the terrifying senior inside the carriage, a man who can wipe out an entire sect with a casual gesture." A dignified enforcement elder was now reduced to merely wishing to drive the carriage steadily. Inside the spacious carriage, which resembled a palace, the atmosphere suddenly turned peculiar. The floor was covered in premium snow sable fur, and in the center sat a small daybed made of warm jade. The scent of dragon saliva incense mingled with her pure natural fragrance, stirring my heart, yet my expression remained exceptionally solemn, devoid of any sinister intentions. I knelt on one knee before the daybed, rolled up my sleeves, and wiped the beads of sweat from my forehead. Fine droplets. I realized that if Chuth and Nuit's severed meridians were not cleared now, they would become permanently obstructed. Although I lack the supernatural ability to heal, I am proficient in the art of massage. I rubbed my hands together to warm them and gazed intently at Chutan Nuet, who was resting on a soft pillow. I told her I would use these advanced acupressure techniques to activate her meridians. In reality, this was merely a method of modern physical therapy. Upon hearing the words massage, her long eyelashes trembled violently. Her state of mind could only be described as chaotic. Although she was feigning being a cripple, she possessed the 10,000-era indestructible immaculate holy body. If an ordinary person were to touch her meridians, their hands would undoubtedly be shattered into blood and bone. Instinctively, she recoiled, her exquisite face filled with panic. She said that she was already a cripple and that I shouldn't waste my efforts in vain. I unceremoniously interrupted her, declaring that she was the wife I had wed. The righteous inquiry and the intense desire to protect erupted instantly within my chest. As long as I have a single breath left, I will never allow you to give up or destroy yourself. I stepped closer, using a domineering tone that brooked no resistance, telling her she must listen to me, leaving her no opportunity to refuse. I reached out and took hold of her wrist directly. The moment our skin made contact, a thunderous roar, her entire body stiffened like a statue of ice, daring not to move, for the dormant laws within her body sensed an external force encroaching, and a terrifying backlash of power surged through her meridians like a raging dragon. She had to desperately suppress this surge of power, lest she be shattered to pieces on the spot. She screamed internally, commanding that sacred physique energy to be gone. Forcing a reversal of the primal backlash left her forehead drenched in cold sweat. Hearing her soft moan, I mistakenly thought I had caused her pain. She gasped, her voice trembling as she told me it was nothing, urging me to continue. Gazing into her tear-filled eyes, my heart began to melt. I took a deep breath and began to massage her with focus using my thumbs. This was an arduous test of my restraint. Her skin was even smoother than the finest white jade by hundredfold. Every time I pressed down, its incredible elasticity ignited the wicked fire within me. For her, however, this was a life-or-death struggle. She had to remain hyper-vigilant while lowering her defenses to nothing. Otherwise, even the slightest deviation would be enough to cost a chi-refining stage cultivator like me my life. Because she had stripped away all defenses, her senses were amplified 1,000-fold. My warm fingers pressed against her acupoints, carrying a strange sensation. Yes, this sensation rushed through her meridians straight into the depths of her soul, causing her to gasp for breath. Her pale face flushed crimson, the redness spreading to her ears and neck. The dignified Nine-Nether Empress was being touched by me until she let out such intoxicating sounds. The extreme sense of shame made her wish to tear through the void and flee. But seeing my sweat-drenched brow and the compassion in my eyes, she calmed down. She realized that I was truly and devotedly caring for a cripple like her. As the ambiguous atmosphere within the carriage threatened to overflow, I reached behind her back, preparing to massage the governor vessel. Targeting the vital meridians, I pressed firmly along both sides of her spine. So King Yu, having relaxed her soul, faltered for a millionth of a second, causing a sliver of spiritual energy, finer than a hair, to instantly rebound. It collided directly with my thumb, emitting a dull thud. I felt as if my finger had struck a block of 10,000-year-old black iron from the heavens. The terrifying recoil left my finger numb and the skin between my fingers split open. I drew a sharp breath and pulled my hand back, my gaze filled with disbelief. This is absolutely not the physical constitution of a cripple. This sensation is even more formidable than that of the half-step nascent soul sword cultivator outside. I stared fixedly at her back, a deep suspicion appearing in my eyes for the first time. I asked her why her meridians were harder than iron and what that surge of power just now was. Su King Yu was startled. After all, being discovered by me, the Empress required a reaction speed faster than light to conceal her true nature. Without a moment of hesitation, she channeled a strand of spiritual energy to pierce her own heart meridians. To be this ruthless toward oneself is the true secret behind how an Empress suppresses an entire era. In the following second, her exquisite face turned as pale as parchment. A blinding spray of fresh blood erupted, landing directly upon my chest. Her body went limp, and she collapsed in my arms. She looked utterly wretched. The seeds of suspicion in my mind vanished instantly at the sight of that blood. I could have slapped myself in frustration. Thinking I was nothing more than a brute, I held her tightly. I apologized incessantly, claiming that my reckless massage had caused her internal injury. She spoke weakly, explaining that her meridians had undergone calcification, turning them as rigid as iron. She even added that expelling that mouthful of stagnant blood had actually brought her some relief. I was enlightened. It seems the Xuanhua novels did not deceive me, as the meridians of a crippled cultivator truly do harden like stone. I promised not to act so rashly again, pulling her close to my chest. Unseen by me, the corners of Su Qingyu's lips curled upward. The sensation of someone being worried to the point of madness over her seemed quite pleasant. At that very moment, the voice of Jian drifted in from outside the carriage, sounding exceptionally respectful. He reported that they had arrived at Tianji City and invited the senior and his wife to disembark. I lifted my gaze to behold the city, which stood as majestic and imposing as an ancient beast. A flash of cold, ruthless killing intent flickered deep within my eyes. Today, whoever dares to hinder me from procuring medicine, I shall make this entire city vanish. Tianji City is the largest commercial hub in the northern cultivation world. It is a place where dragons and snakes dwell together, teeming with desperate outlaws and the eyes of various sects. I walked toward the city gates, carrying the storage ring filled with the entire wealth of the Bloodkill sect. Although I am only at the chi refining stage, I was filled with unshakable confidence. I waved my hand, commanding Jian to clear a path to the finest medicinal pavilion. I declared that I intended to purchase the absolute pinnacle of bloodline golden pills for my wife. Should the shopkeeper prove unreasonable, I would resort to the power of words manifesting law. Even if I must turn Tianji City upside down, I will save her. Su Qingyu leaned against my shoulder, and watching my arrogant demeanor, her heart, frozen for 1,000 years, suddenly felt a hint of sweetness. She silently released her divine sense to envelop the entirety of Tianji City. She resolved that the moment anyone dared to show the slightest killing intent toward me, she would bring a divine catastrophe down upon this ancient city once more. Playing the part of a man living off his wife yet maintaining such a formidable attitude. It seems this dynamic is becoming increasingly compelling. I led the Empress, striding imposingly into the most opulent pavilion in the city. Everyone speculated on the identity of this key refining trash, wondering how he could force a half-step nascent soul expert like Jian Wuchen to clear the path like a groveling dog. A new display of dominance had only just begun. Those residing in the Heaven Rank No. 2 suite might as well prepare for their reincarnation. At this moment, I was holding the slender waist of Chuthan Nuet as we entered Tianji City. This most prosperous city in the north was constructed from black tortoise stone, its walls reaching into the heavens as if to obscure the sky itself. As I sat upon the sandalwood carriage, having spent 1,000 years entering the inner city amidst thunderous roars, 4 violet-eyed cloud leopards pulled the carriage with great majesty. The city gate guards, sensing the sword intent of Jian Wuchen, felt their limbs go weak and hurriedly cleared a wide path. The carriage came to a halt before the 100 Treasures Pavilion. Drenched in gold and splendor, the solid gold plaque shone blindingly under the sunlight. Jian Wukan obsequiously lowered the steps, inviting me to disembark. I stepped down first, then turned back to carefully assist Thon Nuit. Fan Nuet wore a white fox fur cloak, her complexion slightly pale, appearing full of vulnerability. I naturally brushed a strand of hair from her temple. This tender scene immediately attracted a crowd of spectating cultivators. The crowd was shocked to see that the Nine Heavens Empress had truly lost all her cultivation, and some even cast filthy greedy gazes over her body, gazes that instantly filled the air with the stench of danger. Within the depths of Chu Thonwit's eyes, a golden killing intent filled with disdain began to emerge. Just as she prepared to use the laws of heaven to gouge out their eyeballs, I suddenly stepped forward to shield her, roaring out, "If anyone looks at my wife again, I will gouge your eyes out." In my gaze shone a madness and ferocity that disregarded all consequences. Those cultivators were intimidated by my reckless aura and recoiled in fear. The ancient destructive laws at her fingertips suddenly dissipated. She inwardly scolded me for being a fool, but the eyes she turned toward me were much gentler. This sensation of being strictly protected left her somewhat intoxicated. I grasped Thon Nuit's small hand and strode into the 100 Treasures Pavilion. All manner of rare artifacts glowed within the hazy spiritual energy. Young Master Lin Tianhu the Master led his band of lackeys toward us, spouting sarcasm. He mocked, "I, a mere chi-refining trash, cannot even protect such a beautiful wife, yet I still have the arrogance to claim I will buy an empress." The entire hall erupted in mocking laughter, causing my gaze to turn icy cold. This whelp was previously only fit to kneel and kowtow outside the underground palace. I looked at him calmly and flicked my finger. Jian Wuyan's expression darkened, and he immediately landed a thunderous slap. Lin Tianhu was struck as if by a massive hammer. His entire body was sent flying, along with several shattered teeth. He slammed into the spiritual artifact display and lost consciousness on the spot. The entire hall fell deathly silent. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. The chief manager of the Baibao Pavilion rushed down from the upper floor, sweating profusely in terror as he sensed the sword intent of a half-step nascent soul expert. Jian Wuyan bowed respectfully and addressed me as Lord Shengxian. This spectacle caused the worldview of everyone present to completely collapse. A half-step nascent soul expert was willingly acting as a humble servant to a mere chi-refining practitioner. I waved my hand to stop Jian Wuyan's intention to exterminate the witnesses. I asked the manager if they possessed a supreme-grade heavenly fragrance life-renewing pill. The trembling manager insisted that the heaven tier room required a verification of assets. He warned that a kept man like me would never be able to produce enough spirit stones. I gave a cold laugh and slammed the blood spirit sword onto the white jade table. A thunderous roar shook the Baibao Pavilion as countless stones radiating dense spiritual energy poured out frantically. This pile of supreme-grade spirit stones immediately formed a dazzling small mountain. The manager shrieked, "This is at least 100,000 supreme-grade spirit stones." Every cultivator present was forced to bow their heads in humiliation under the brilliance of the stones. Truly, money can even buy the gods. I patted the chief manager's face and asked if this was enough. He collapsed to his knees, inviting us to the #1 heaven tier room. I held Qing Yu by the waist and walked calmly upstairs amidst gazes of awe and fear. Qing Ye was astonished, wondering where I had acquired so many supreme-grade spirit stones. I told her these were merely remnants picked up last night thanks to my cultivation technique, adding that no matter the cost, I would ensure she could stand on her own 2 feet once again. Su Qingyu squeezed my hand in return, a captivating smile blossoming at the corners of her lips. On the auction stage, the female auctioneer presented the final divine pill. The starting price of 10,000 supreme-grade spirit stones was inflated tenfold by me. I calmly bid 100,000, leaving the entire assembly in stunned silence. But a cold voice emanated from the second heaven tier room. The opponent deliberately raised the bid to 110,000 to provoke me. That provocative tone showed no regard for me whatsoever. I shouted a bid of 200,000, but the opponent refused to let go, as if hell-bent on a suicide mission. I stood up with a cold laugh, intending to use the law of causality curse, while Qingyue held a cup of cold tea, ready to send the opponent to their reincarnation. After all, anyone who dares to steal from the man of this emperor is truly tired of living. If they truly wish to court death, I shall grant these ants their final wish. The provocations from the VIP room #2 still echoed throughout the grand hall. The surrounding cultivators held their breath, waiting for my next bid. The fate of the young master of the Lin family earlier had clearly taught them nothing. Some even foolishly dismissed me as nothing more than an upstart with a heavy purse. I turned to look at Chu Tanwet, noticing the cold, murderous glint in her eyes intensifying. I knew this was a sign that she was on the verge of slaughter, but I intended to use my own method to catch our opponent off guard. I deliberately sighed, remarking that having this much wealth was truly becoming a nuisance to carry. If our friend in room #2 is so insistent, I shall concede. I'm withdrawing my bid of 200,000 spirit stones. The entire hall erupted in a commotion, assuming that this wealthy benefactor had suddenly turned timid. A laugh, dripping with arrogance and haughtiness, emanated from room #2. The voice mocked, jeering that the great Earth Lord was, after all, nothing but a coward. However, my next action sent a shudder of absolute terror through everyone present. I pointed a finger toward that private room, my gesture casual and indifferent. I muttered under my breath, "Since I have bestowed this medicinal pill upon you, do hold on to it tightly. I only hope your shallow fate and frail constitution can withstand the pill's energy without causing you to explode." At that very moment, the spirit tea in Shu Tanwui's hand quietly evaporated, and an aura potent enough to paralyze the soul pierced through the walls. The laughter from room number 2 was abruptly silenced, replaced by the sound of a heavy object hitting the floor and ragged, desperate breathing. None knew that the arrogant agitator inside had been terrified to the point of losing all composure, for in that split second he had caught a glimpse of his own soul being annihilated. The steward trembled as he announced that room number 2 had successfully won the auction. Yet within that room no one dared to step forward to claim the prize. They did not even dare to produce a single spirit stone to complete the payment. I calmly reclined on the sofa, continuing to enjoy my top-grade spirit tea. I have stated it before, in this Tianji city, whoever dares to impede my acquisition of medicine must vanish. Chu Tonghuanyuet looked at me, her expression mimicking that of a profound expert. Her icy heart felt for the first time a touch of peace. She whispered, "Husband, that look of supreme authority you wore just now, deciding life and death with a single word, was truly magnificent." My face flushed slightly as I replied that these were merely basic maneuvers, and she would grow accustomed to them in time. Although that medicinal pill had temporarily fallen into the hands of that coward, I knew it would inevitably return to Thongwet by tonight. As for whether that unfortunate soul in room number 2 survives the night, it depends entirely on the mood of my empress. I took Thon Wuyat's hand, intending to head to the next floor to select some defensive artifacts. Today, I am not merely here for medicine, I intend to purchase the entirety of the 100 Treasures Pavilion. This sensation of spending wealth as if it were nothing is truly addictive. Outside the 100 Treasures Pavilion, however, countless experts from the Lin family had already gathered. It seems my fortune of 10 million spirit stones has successfully stirred their bottomless greed. Yet glancing at the Empress beside me, whose gaze held a hidden depth, I could only pray that these people from the Lin family would flee with haste. A flicker of intense killing intent crossed Chu Thanwui's eyes, enough to send a chill down anyone's spine. She never imagined that this so-called supreme divine pill had been tampered with. Deep within its refined medicinal properties lay an ancient poison that even a nascent soul expert would fail to detect. Had an ordinary talentless individual consumed this pill, their soul would have withered and perished instantly. It was clear that someone had meticulously calculated that I would spare no cost to procure this. By making me offer the pill to her, they intended to use my own hands to poison the wife I cherished so dearly. I watched her after she swallowed the pill. Her naturally rosy complexion suddenly turned deathly pale, and she clutched her chest in evident pain, her entire body trembling slightly. My mind roared with a deafening sound, as if something within me had shattered completely. The overwhelming joy of having just secured a life-saving medicine instantly transformed into boundless panic and rage. I held her tightly, anxiously asking her what was wrong, wondering if the medicinal potency was simply too strong. Secretly, Thon Nuit channeled the ancient poison into her fingertips, while her amber eyes surged with a murderous aura sufficient to make the gods themselves collapse. Yet when she faced me, she masterfully reverted to a state of fragile self-reproach. A trail of black blood leaked from the corner of her mouth as she trembled and whispered, "There is poison in the pill." I stared fixedly at that streak of black blood, my heart aching as if it were about to stop beating. I, Lu Uyan, having lived 2 lifetimes, felt for the first time what true unbridled fury meant. I had exhausted so much effort and spent 10,000 supreme-grade spirit stones only to purchase a lethal poison. The Baibao Pavilion did not just want my wealth, they wanted my wife's life. I had always considered myself an ordinary transmigrator who merely wished for a peaceful existence. But in this moment, I wanted the entire heavenly city to be buried alongside the pain of my wife. I gently laid Tan Wiyat down and coldly wiped the black blood from the corner of her mouth. I turned and strode toward the door of the private room. With every step, the murderous aura around me grew heavier. Kiem Vongan, standing guard at the door, felt this surge of energy and fell to his knees in terror. He had never seen his master display such a terrifying expression, as if he intended to destroy heaven and earth. I kicked open the door of the room and let out a roar, shouting toward the silent corridor for the head manager and the alchemist to crawl out here at once. This roar was laced with the madness and desperation that had long been accumulating within me. Yet at the very moment I erupted, her terrifying divine sense transformed into 10,000 golden needles, instantly engulfing the entirety of the Baibao Pavilion. Every corner down to the very mice in the furnace cellar fell under her absolute surveillance. She did not merely wish to protect me, she intended to help me unmask the culprit who struck from the shadows. Since these cowards wished to play such treacherous, underhanded games, she would see them through to the bitter end. The head manager arrived, trailing several trembling guardians who were shouting in a panic. They shirked all responsibility, claiming that the Baibao Pavilion's reputation was illustrious, insisting they would never sell counterfeit medicine, and that this elixir had been brought for auction by an esteemed guest elder from the Medicine King Valley himself, and was therefore entirely above reproach. Those few guardians even attempted to rely on their numbers, threatening me with brute force. I offered a cold laugh, and raising my right hand toward the void, delivered a powerful slap through the air. With an imposing aura, I roared, "Anyone who dares to deceive me shall pay with their life." The moment my hand descended, the golden laws radiating from Chu Qingyu's fingertips erupted with violent intensity. Those golden core stage guardians could not even muster a cry before they were pulverized into a mist of blood. The thick walls of the Baibao Pavilion were reduced to dust by the sheer impact of the shockwave. The once ornate corridor was instantly transformed into a heap of rubble reeking of blood, and the head manager was so terrified that he lost control of his senses, collapsing onto the ground like a mangy dog, begging frantically for mercy. He had finally realized just how terrifying this Yuan, whom he had perceived as a mere chi refining stage cultivator, truly was. This was no longer just the manifestation of a spell. It was as if a natural disaster had descended upon the world. I stepped on the head manager's crown, demanding to know the whereabouts of that apothecary. Trembling, he pointed toward a secluded alchemy room in the inner courtyard of the Baibao Pavilion, stammering, "That elder from the Medicine King Valley is currently in seclusion, resting after having received the spirit stones." I let out a cold hum, grabbed the head manager, and tossed him into the backyard like refuse. Chu Qingyu followed closely behind me. Although she still appeared frail and sickly, every step she took caused the ground to fissure with intricate, glowing golden patterns. She was clearing every potential obstacle in my path with the most overbearing methods imaginable. We navigated through the ruins of the architecture and quickly arrived before the alchemy room. The door was tightly shut, exuding a foul, nauseating, and deeply strange stench. Inside, a gaunt old man in a green robe was gloating as he counted his spirit stones. He was the guest elder of the Medicine King Valley, but in reality, he was a demonic cultivator who specialized in poisons. Sensing the commotion outside, he threw the door open, a cruel smile still lingering on his face. The old man mocked me as a fool, scoffing that I actually dared to feed that lethal poison to a talentless empress. He boasted of the soul-severing goo, claiming it was an incurable toxin, and that within moments, Chuthan Nuiet would dissolve into a pool of blood. Hearing those 4 words, dissolve into blood, I felt my reason ignite and consume itself. I no longer had need for reason, nor did I require any logic to formulate a countermeasure. I raised that cursed thumb of mine once more, possessed by some inexplicable power, and pointed it directly at him. "In the name of the master of this body, I command you to drop dead on the spot." As the word "die" left my lips, the entire sky turned as black as ink. Chutan Wit no longer held back the peerless divine aura belonging to the Juyo Empress. She stood behind me, her white robes fluttering without a breeze, appearing incredibly sacred and majestic. From her dark golden eyes, 2 beams of light shot forth, sharp enough to pierce through the ages. These rays struck with absolute precision, penetrating every meridian of the demonic cultivator. The sneer on his face froze as every single meridian in his body detonated simultaneously. Countless fine sprays of blood erupted from his pores. The scene was harrowing. Before he could even comprehend what had transpired, his soul was utterly annihilated by the laws of the Earth realm. A renowned peak-stage golden core demonic cultivator could not withstand even a single second before me. I did not even feel a hint of fatigue, yet this incomparable enemy had already been erased. This invincible ability, which I had merely imagined, had reached a new unprecedented height at this very moment. I looked at the wreckage on the ground without a shred of pity, feeling only an infinite coldness. I turned around and pulled Chuthan Wet into my arms, asking how she was feeling. She leaned against my chest with immense tenderness and said, "The toxin has vanished in a most peculiar way." She even devised one-finger technique, calling it truly unprecedented, a supreme art that none could rival. In truth, she had long since used her own formidable laws to refine that ancient poison into nourishment. Yet I, her foolish husband, truly believed that my own domineering aura had saved her life. I triumphantly led her back to the desolate hall of the 100 Treasures Pavilion. By now, every expert in the city of Heaven's Edge had been stirred by the commotion. The head of the Lin clan arrived with thousands of elite soldiers, surrounding us in layer after layer. He shouted, demanding that I pay the price for severely wounding his son, and for destroying the 100 Treasures Pavilion. I looked at the mongrels swarming around us like flies, a trace of disdain curling at the corner of my mouth. With an air of vast indifference, I retrieved handfuls of supreme-grade spirit stones from my storage ring and scattered them into the air. I declared, "Today, whoever dares to touch a single hair on my head will find their own skull sold to feed the dogs." The tension that once been poised like a drawn bow suddenly felt laughable under the baptism of a rain of spirit stones. Numerous disciples began to slaughter one another, desperate to claim the peerless grade spirit stones. I held Tong Wit by the waist, escorted by Kiem Vogon as we marched proudly through the encirclement. The sensation of crushing one's adversaries through the sheer combination of immense wealth and violence was truly intoxicating. The head of the Lin clan, trembling with rage, personally brandished his long saber and struck toward me. He was a true master of the mid-stage nascent soul realm. This strike carried the crushing force of mountains and the churning fury of the seas. I watched the whistling blade descend, not even deigning to blink. With an air of absolute nonchalance, I blew a breath into the void and commanded, "Let this wretched blade shatter." Just as the tip of the saber reached half an inch from my throat, Thung Nuiet's gaze turned freezing. An invisible barrier of energy manifested instantly between me and the Lin clan head. That renowned northern saber, upon touching the energy wall, crumbled inch by inch, turning into nothing but fine dust. The head of the Lin clan was sent flying hundreds of meters back by the overwhelming force of the rebound, and the nascent soul he had always taken such pride in was at this moment fractured. The cultivators present were no longer merely silent. They were utterly paralyzed, their souls shaken to the core. A single breath was all it took to shatter the weapon of a master. The nascent soul realm, what kind of monstrous level of power is this? With an aura of absolute dominance, I held Dan Wit's hand and walked toward the carriage drawn by the Bronze Cloud leopards, declaring to everyone within Tianji City, "From this day forth, this land belongs to me. Who is for it, and who is against it?" These 8 words echoed relentlessly through the vacant street. Not a soul dared utter a word of dissent, leaving only the sound of heads bowing in repeated supplication. So Thonwet sat upon the carriage watching my unbridled, demon lord-like demeanor. Her heart, frozen for 1,000 years, began to burn with the intensity of molten lava. She spoke, "Husband, if this is what you desire, I shall assist you in conquering the entirety of the northern region." I sat beside her with a foolish grin, secretly thinking that a life of luxury and power was truly satisfying. The carriage departed, laden with treasures and the weight of our newfound prestige as we headed toward our next destination. I knew well that the chaotic era of the cultivation world had only just begun with my arrival. Next, I would take my wife to seek the legendary primordial lifehound. Only when her divine bridge is fully restored can I rest easy and live the life of an idle, peerless expert. As for the sects and old monsters, after all, my words of power technique is nearing the great perfection realm. Whoever dares to defy me, I need only whisper a command. 100 times in my heart, and their entire lineage shall ascend to the heavens on the spot. I had spent 100,000 supreme-grade spirit stones to purchase a life-saving divine elixir for my wife, only to watch helplessly as she drank it and coughed up a great mouthful of black blood. I watched her body lose its warmth, her breath fading as she collapsed in my arms. As a transmigrator, I felt despair for the first time. I had believed that awakening the words of power would be enough to protect her for a lifetime of peace. I never imagined that it would be my own hands that pushed her into the abyss of death. Just as the elder of the Medicine King Valley led his assassins through the doors, intent on snatching her away, the rage I had suppressed to its absolute limit finally triggered a supreme miracle. I pointed my finger in fury at that pack of mongrels. The scene that followed left the entire cultivation world in terror. Those golden core experts were reduced to pools of blood right before my eyes, and even that arrogant elder was reduced to a pile of black ash on the spot. It turns out that the words of power truly require the fuel of absolute, boundless rage to be unlocked. I cradled my beloved wife in my arms. Having just resurrected, she stepped out from the darkness of the 100 Treasures Pavilion. I swore that I would turn all the villains in this world into smoke and dust. The truth is, days ago, the divine elixir had carried that cursed scripture deep into Gu Qingyu's body. I nervously clutched her hand, not daring to look away for even a second. I was filled with the hope that she would stand once more and return as the invincible empress. But who could have guessed that as the medicinal effect faded, this divine elixir would reveal itself as a death warrant? A stream of vicious black energy erupted from the core of the pill, filled with thousands of tiny, hair-thin parasitic insects. This was a forbidden, cruel technique intended to refine Kinsu into a mindless puppet. The person who poisoned her possessed a heart of extreme malice, clearly intent on ending her life. King Yu wore a faint expression of mockery, finding these lowly ants laughable. Did they truly think these wretched parasites could gnaw through her flawless saint body, an existence eternal and indestructible? A single thought from her was enough to turn these vermin into nothingness. Yet this cunning empress decided to play a game with me, choosing to use their own trap against them. She let out a cry of pain that sounded incredibly genuine. Her complexion turned deathly black, and a stream of sickening, dark, poisonous blood sprayed across her snowy white fox fur cloak. Her eyes glazed over, and she collapsed limp into my arms, her breathing silenced. My heart stopped in that moment, and I completely lost my mind. I cradled her tightly, letting out a mournful howl that echoed like a dying wolf in the wild. With frantic desperation, I used my sleeves to wipe away the black blood trickling from the corner of her lips, but the more I wiped, the more the virulent poison seeped forth. Her body temperature plummeted, turning as cold as ice. In a state of near madness, I pointed to the heavens and commanded Qingyu to recover at once. In the name of the heavenly Tao, I command these wretched toxins to vanish. Yet the woman in my arms remained faint, showing not the slightest sign of waking. For the first time, I felt the insignificance and helplessness of being a transmigrator. I had thought that awakening the invincible system would make me peerless, yet I could not even discern a simple poisonous elixir. The utter panic of losing my beloved caused me to descend into complete emotional instability. With tears streaming down my face, I swore that all those who harmed her would be buried alongside her. Sensing my scorching tears, Qingyu's heart suddenly trembled. She never expected that this man, who usually enjoyed acting aloof, would weep for her like a child. Her initial intent to merely toy with her opponents was instantly replaced by a heaven-shaking fury. To dare bring tears to my husband's eyes, your entire clan shall perish here today. At the very moment her killing intent reached a boiling point, all the glass windows in the private room shattered into pieces, and the very air condensed into a layer of terrifying thick black ice. I mistakenly believed this was my words manifesting as law finally being triggered by my overwhelming emotions. At that moment, Mo Wuki, the supreme elder of the Medicine King Valley, led his assassins as they smashed through the door. He mocked me, claiming that the previous display of power was merely the result of a one-time use talisman. He confessed to adding the soul-devouring vein-severing curse into the divine elixir. Greedily eyeing Qingyu, he desired to refine her into the most perfect dual cultivation cauldron, while intending to kill me, a mere chi condensation trash, to hoard all the supreme spirit stones for himself. I slowly stood up and wiped away my tears, my eyes now filled with nothing but boundless coldness. Since you have dared to touch a single hair on my wife's head, I shall turn this very sky upside down. I once again raised my right hand, pointing toward Mo Wuchi, sentencing them to have their souls extinguished. The 6 golden core assassins laughed as they brandished their dharma treasures and lunged at me. In that moment of extreme peril, Qingyu, who had been poisoned, suddenly opened her eyes, her irises transforming into terrifying swirling golden abyssal vortexes. With an air of absolute elegance, she flicked her finger gently into the void, but the law of inversion erupted violently across this entire realm in an instant. The 6 assassins froze in midair, their bodies emitting harrowing, piercing screeches. Immediately after, black flames ignited from within them, burning and collapsing their forms with frantic intensity. Within half a breath, the 6 experts were reduced to pools of thick black sludge. Mo Wuji, who had been laughing arrogantly, suddenly changed expression, his face contorted in soul-deep terror. Donggu had unleashed an unexpected karmic backlash that surged directly into his body. He vomited black blood and collapsed to his knees before me, enduring the agony of an eternal piercing of his heart. Before he perished, he finally realized that Qingyu was the ancient, primordial beast that had just awakened. With a cold, singular command to perish, Qingyu reduced him to clouds of dust, plunging the entire hall back into a deathly silence. I stood there, stunned, silently contemplating my own incantations. My word-based techniques not only manifest at will, but also carry a passive collective backlash effect. The power of this karmic retribution is thousands of times more terrifying than a nuclear bomb. Seeing Qingyu flush crimson as she sat up, I was filled with joy and rushed to embrace her. I told her that as long as I am filled with rage, not even the heavens themselves would dare take her away. Qingyu swiftly withdrew her emperor's might, returning to the appearance of a frail invalid as she leaned against my shoulder and whispered softly. She praised my display of power just moments ago, calling me her foolish husband. Being complimented made me feel as if I were walking on air. I patted my chest, promising grandly. Even if the king of hell himself arrived, he would have to kneel and beg for mercy. I took her hand and strolled arrogantly out of the Black Baibao pavilion, not noticing that where Mo Wuji vanished, a mysterious parchment remained amidst the rubble. I bent down to retrieve the tattered scroll, which featured an incredibly complex map drawn in divine script. The 2 large characters, Dragonbone, radiated an eerie crimson light. This was the only relic left behind by Mo Wuji upon his death, and the memories of the original host in my mind began to churn rapidly. Legend tells that this is the resting place where an ancient true dragon fell, a land overflowing with treasures, containing even the essence blood of a true dragon capable of reconstructing one's meridians and physical body. I secretly mused that this was surely the second life-changing opportunity bestowed upon me by the heavens. As long as I obtain this divine medicinal treasure, Qingyu will certainly make a full recovery. I excitedly turned to show this priceless map to Qingyu. She gave it only a casual glance, yet gently agreed to accompany me nonetheless. In truth, she viewed it as nothing more than a muddy pit where a long wretched worm had died. But as long as her husband, myself, was happy, she did not mind taking a stroll there. I waved my hand, commanding the old sword dog. Our target was the Tanglong ruins, located 800 miles away. Half an incense stick later, we reached that desolate gorge. By this time, countless experts from the sects of the northern region had already gathered there. The sky was crowded with flying swords, spirit ships, and various exotic beasts, all emanating terrifying auras. Today was the day the Tanglong Valley Secret Realm opened its doors, an event that occurs only once every 100 years. Countless peerless geniuses and ancient monsters had arrived to fight for the ancient fortuitous encounters. Accompanied by a deafening roar that shook the very earth and mountains, space itself began to fracture, and a void gate, brimming with lethal killing intent, appeared before everyone's eyes. Several dozen Foundation establishment cultivators, ignorant of the stakes, attempted to rush in first. In the blink of an eye, they were shredded into blood and bone by the 9 nether gale winds swirling within the void. This gruesome sight left everyone paralyzed with fear. No one dared to take another step forward. Zhan Wushuang, the holy son of the Zhantian sect, pulled out a bronze ancient mirror to force a protective barrier. Under immense pressure, he struggled immensely just to cross into the lethal formation. While these geniuses were risking their lives and coughing up blood just to enter, I calmly took Qingyu's small hand and strolled toward the entrance. The surrounding cultivators, seeing how weak we appeared, began to laugh and ridicule us. They assumed that a mere chi-refining stage cultivator dragging a useless person along was simply courting death. However, the corner of my mouth curled into a look of disdain. I told Qingyu to hold my hand tightly and not to fear this riffraff. Without bothering to manifest any protective spiritual energy, I walked straight into the 9 heavens killing array. The absurdity of it was that those terrifying gales, upon nearing me, automatically veered away. They even transformed into a gentle breeze softly blowing through Qingyu's hair. I strolled through as if walking in a backyard garden, guiding her through with effortless grace. Thousands of cultivators outside stared with wide eyes, stunned into silence. They rubbed their eyes repeatedly, convinced they were witnessing some illogical illusion. After all, even a genius like Zhan Wushuang had nearly been stripped of his life entering that space, yet a chi-refining trash like me could saunter through the lethal array with such leisure. I thought smugly that I was indeed the son of heaven, protected by an aura of destiny. In truth, it was only because Qingyu had inadvertently leaked a trace of her impeccable emperor body aura. The array spirit, terrified, had long since prostrated itself on the ground, trembling and daring not to resist. Had she not been suppressing her power, the entire formation would have collapsed on the spot. After passing through the gate, we entered a primordial forest dense with spiritual energy. We had not gone far before we saw Zhan Wushuang being hunted by a demonic ape. It was an 8-armed abyss demon ape with the cultivation of the mid-nascent soul stage. Every punch possessed the strength to flatten an entire mountain. Zhan Wushuang, his face bloodied and bruised, fled frantically toward me, begging for his life. I realized this was yet another opportune moment to demonstrate my true strength. With an overbearing presence, I stepped firmly in front of Qing Yue. She pointed toward the demon ape and commanded, "Kneel before me." That aura was truly enough to command respect from all directions. The moment the demon ape locked eyes with Qing Yue, its savage gaze shifted instantly. It was a primal, deep-seated fear etched into its very soul beyond all description. It halted in midair and collapsed to the ground, even rolling over to expose its belly in a display of pathetic submission. Watching this scene, Zhan Wushuang's entire worldview collapsed as he witnessed this fawning behavior. He was convinced that I was an ancient monster, far more terrifying than the sect master of the Zhan Tian sect. I walked with cold disdain across the demon ape's belly, heading toward the center of the sacrificial altar. The golden true dragon essence fruit pulsed with brilliant radiance at the very heart of the altar. Yet the moment I reached out to claim the fruit, a malicious draconic pressure awakened. It was an ancient remnant soul, slumbering for 10,000 years, now launching an assault upon me. My mind went blank instantly. I felt as though my very soul was being torn asunder. At this critical life or death moment, Qing Yue's disguise completely dissolved. She whirled around to shield me, her eyes erupting with dark, golden imperial authority. With cold indifference, she uttered a single word to the dragon remnant, causing the heavens and earth to pale. The remnant soul, which had shown no fear, even toward cultivators of the transformation stage, actually knelt. The once ferocious dragon soul was now shivering before Qing Yue, its cowardice penetrating to the bone. It was as if it had encountered the most terrifying existence of its entire life. The entire secret realm fell into dead silence after her command. I stared in bewilderment at the dragon soul, which was shrinking like a frightened worm, wondering how my command could possess such overwhelming power. Could it be that I, Lu Yuan, have reached the great perfection of the realm where one's words become law? Qing Yue silently retracted her peerless, eternal, suppressing divine aura and gripped the hem of my robe, returning to her fragile, pitiful appearance. She whispered, "Husband, you are truly formidable. Even the dragon soul was frightened into kneeling by you." I chuckled, smugly plucking the true dragon essence fruit. "I have already said it. In this world, as long as I am here, no one shall lay a finger on you." Zhan Wushuang, watching from afar, had completely lost the ability to process what he had seen. He fled the secret realm in a panic, swearing never to provoke any mortal ever again. I remained composed. Qing Yu and I continued to stroll through the secret realm as if it were a private garden. Every demonic beast that dared to block our path learned how to kowtow. I couldn't help but feel that being guided through this dungeon by a high-level expert was truly exhilarating. I even began to consider whether I should simply take this hidden dragon bone back home with me. After all, with my current ability to command reality through speech, moving mountains and shifting seas seemed like a trivial matter. Qing Yu looked at my smug, self-satisfied expression with nothing but indulgence. She chose to continue playing this game of absolute dominance alongside me, at least until the day I could truly traverse this cultivation world unchallenged. By this time, numerous sect reinforcements had gathered outside the hidden Dragon Valley. Having heard that a peerless sword immortal who commands reality through speech had appeared in the secret realm, they arrived with generous offerings, hoping to pay their respects to the legendary expert, myself. However, my only goal at present was to take Qing Yu to the best possible location to treat her injuries. A decayed, ancient voice, brimming with endless malice, echoed across the altar as if piercing through the ages of time and space. A massive, fiery phantom of a true dragon soared from a rift in the altar, locking its gaze firmly upon us. This was the true pressure of a soul formation expert, a force capable of turning the heavens and earth upside down. My mind erupted with a thunderous roar, leaving me completely blank. My entire body froze in place, unable to move even a single finger. In that lethal fraction of a second, Su Qingyo, who had always been trembling behind my back, suddenly shed her guise. Every layer of pretense vanished from her pale, beautiful face, and her clear eyes transformed into terrifying dark gold abyss-like vortexes. Deep within her pupils, it seemed as if gods were buried. She spun around, pulling me, who was still in a daze, behind her. That slender, frail frame stood firm like an ancient mountain, blocking the overwhelming pressure. Coldly, she uttered a single word, a command of ghosts at the spiritless true dragon. There was no explosive force nor any light tearing through the void. There was only the law of the Emperor Realm, which far surpasses the great Tao of this world, grinding down upon the dragon's head like a brutal, world-ending millstone. The savage dragon, which had been radiating monstrous light and intended to devour me, widened its eyes in terror, its eyeballs nearly bursting from their sockets. It realized that this was a living embodiment of the peerless imperial body. It could not comprehend how a female emperor could be present in such a low-level secret realm, nor could it understand why it had dared to attack the man of such an empress. Before a divine power capable of obliterating the very heavens and earth, it was insignificant. The remnant soul of the true dragon let out a cry in its despair, a miserable, piercing shriek. Its soul formation pressure was nothing more than a faint, insignificant gust of wind. An intense desire to survive caused it to completely discard the dignity of a true dragon. Frantically, it shrank its spirit body from 1,000 zhang down to a single zhang, finally compressing itself into a tiny golden earthworm. With clinical precision, it landed upon the stone tile right at the tip of my foot. At my feet, this ancient true dragon proficiently curled its body into a ball, began to kowtow, and let out whimpering sounds like a puppy begging for mercy. Finally recovering, I braced myself and let out a resounding roar of great might heavenly dragon. only to choke on my own words the moment I opened my eyes to see the reality before me. The altar was completely empty. There was no terrifying monster to be found, only a small golden snake the size of a palm bowing its head toward me. Behind me, King Yu clutched her chest, her expression a masterclass in feigned terror, acting as if that gust of wind had been truly fearsome. My mind raced at lightning speed, frantically weaving together a narrative to explain the absurdity. In my mind, I concluded that my soul must have been bound to some invincible bloodline. My soul must surely possess the supreme fate of the Eternal Dragon Emperor. That ancient dragon must have attempted a sneak attack, only to be thwarted by my defenses. Better yet, it must have been cowed into its infantile form by the sheer imposing aura of kingship radiating from me. I pointed arrogantly at the small dragon which was staring up at me from beneath my feet. This ancient dragon has undoubtedly been completely subjugated by me, the Son of Heaven's mandate, the true dragon's remnant soul. Upon hearing such shameless words, the dragon nearly spat blood in indignation. It thought to itself, if not for the great emperor watching, I would drown you in a single spit of my saliva. But catching sight of Chu Qingyu's threatening glare, it whimpered, shed tears of humiliation, and began rubbing its head against my foot. It even tried to curry favor by mimicking the sound of a cat, all to please me. I laughed heartily and grabbed the tiny golden snake by the scruff of its neck. I held it up like a prized treasure and walked toward Chu Qingyu. Qingyu, this ferocious beast has been reduced to a trembling mess by my aura of kingship. Look how lovely and golden it is. I shall bring it back as a pet for you, or if you are ever hungry, you can simply treat it as a spicy snack. Upon hearing that it was being considered as a snack, the true dragon was so terrified that it rolled its eyes and fainted. Chu Qingyu received the shrunken true dragon soul with extreme gentleness. Her jade-like fingers secretly placed a restriction on it before she softly praised me. She told me that her husband was truly peerless in this world and that she cherished this gift. My face flushed, and in total satisfaction I plucked the true dragon's essence blood fruit. With no protective formation left and no demonic beasts daring to emerge and cause trouble, I plucked it as easily as one would pick an apple from a backyard garden. Just as we were about to turn and leisurely stroll back the way we came, several wretched, blood-soaked figures crawled up from beneath the altar. It was Zhan Wushuang leading a group of renowned geniuses, having finally arrived at their destination. To overcome the formation, they had exhausted every single one of their life-saving trump cards. Zhan Wushuang, his face covered in blood, had intended to seize the true dragon fruit to restore his lost glory, but as he took in the scene upon the altar, he stood completely paralyzed. A piece of trash like me, only at the chi refinement stage, was standing high above, safe and sound, while the divine fruit was being held by me, as if it were nothing more than— I stuffed the cabbage whiskers into my bag without a second thought. I even noticed that a remnant soul of a true dragon was coiled around the Empress's wrist. The aura of that deity transformation level origin essence was unmistakable. The Tao heart of Zhan Wushuang shattered in that very moment. The serendipity he had risked his life to find was now being nonchalantly snatched away by me. He even harbored the suspicion that I was a true immortal who had descended to the mortal realm to experience life. I asked him with extreme arrogance whether he was staring at me because of my striking good looks. I mocked him, noting that all his desperate struggles were worth less than my casual stroll to attain this fortune. Zhan Wushuang was so enraged that he spat a mouthful of blood toward the heavens before collapsing unconscious. The other geniuses were so furious that they trembled, fell to the ground, and went into convulsions. I shook my head in disappointment, finding this crowd far too faint-hearted. I embraced Qingyu's slender waist and strode out of the secret realm with an air of absolute confidence. My only thought was to use this fruit tonight to heal her meridians. Little did I know, the medicinal potency of this true dragon fruit was incredibly tyrannical. Any mortal who consumes it without practicing dual cultivation to guide the energy will surely burst and perish. Su Qingyu sat in the carriage, her face flushing crimson as she stared at the divine herb. She understood that a night of intense dual cultivation was now unavoidable. The dark-hearted Empress had already begun contemplating how she would instruct me in this technique. I awoke early the next morning in a vast frozen wasteland, feeling like a deity who ruled over the ice. Looking at Qingyu in my arms, I saw her complexion had regained its healthy rosy glow. I could not help but feel a sense of smug satisfaction. It was gratifying to know that last night's miraculous physical cooling had finally suppressed the medicinal potency of the ancient true dragon fruit. This spontaneous manifestation of techniques is truly becoming more intuitive to use with time. In the future, if the summer heat becomes unbearable, an hour of this will resolve it. It cures everything. I looked down at Qingyu, still fast asleep in my embrace. Her long eyelashes fluttered slightly in the sunlight. Her delicate porcelain skin radiated a healthy, vibrant flush. It seems the true dragon blood essence fruit is indeed a divine medicine rarely seen in this world. I couldn't help but stroke my chin with self-satisfaction. I mused that while the geniuses of the cultivation world would risk their lives and fail to obtain it, it ended up in the hands of a mere chi-refining mortal like me, only to be processed into jam and fed to my wife. If word of this were to spread, the ancient monsters of the world would surely die of sheer frustration on the spot. Just as I prepared to rise and start breakfast, Qingyu slowly opened her large, luminous eyes. A subtle, imperceptible glint of mischief flashed through her eyes, before immediately shifting into an expression of dazed adoration. With a fragile voice, she asked me if I was the one who had saved her life. I puffed out my chest in supreme arrogance, declaring that such feats were merely a display of my peerless martial might. I told her that last night I had not only severed the consciousness of the true dragon with a single word, but had also casually channeled the Nine Heavens aura to forcibly stabilize her condition. Do you not feel that your meridians are now completely unblocked? Thangwet, playing her part perfectly, sensed the flow of chi within her body, and pretending to be overjoyed, she gripped my robe, shaking it gently while showering me with praise as the most formidable hero in all the myriad worlds. In truth, her meridians were far more than merely unblocked. The true dragon's essence had not only healed the wounds she had intentionally inflicted upon herself, but had also accelerated the perfection of her flawless imperial physique. At this moment, a single thought from her could wipe this entire town from the map. Yet before me, she remained the weak, defenseless little wife. Basking in her worshipful gaze, I felt a surge of illicit pleasure and waved my hand. Come, let us depart. We shall dine at the finest pavilion in the city. But the moment we pushed open the frozen doors of our chamber, a chaotic sequence of footsteps erupted from the courtyard, accompanied by the aggressive shouting of the old servant, the half-step nascent soul expert Yuan. It turned out the commotion we caused last night was far too great. The entire courtyard now resembled a colossal block of ice, reflecting bizarre kaleidoscopic light under the morning sun. This miraculous phenomenon had immediately disturbed the town's overseer and various wandering cultivators. Convinced that a peerless weapon or extraordinary treasure was hidden here, this mob arrived, weapons drawn, intent on seizing a share of the spoils. The overseer, a minor cultivator at the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm, stood there with a face full of greed, pointing his finger and berating Jian Wuyan, demanding the old servant vanish at once, claiming that such a supernatural omen must be surrendered to the imperial court for processing. Although Jian Wuyan possessed profound cultivation, he dared not act without my command. He could only suppress his rage, emitting a faint, illusory aura of sword intent. I took Thong Wit by the hand and stepped out of the ice house with supreme arrogance, surveying the dozens of rabble-rousers clamoring at our door, feeling not a shred of fear but rather amusement. The opportunity to display my prowess had arrived right at my doorstep. It was simply perfect. I deliberately adopted a grave expression and let out a cold harumph. Who is it that dares to bray so loudly here? Upon seeing that I was but a mortal with only the slightest fluctuation of chi refining, the overseer first froze, then erupted into a fit of maniacal, scornful laughter. He mocked me, questioning how a lily-livered face like mine had not yet frozen to death inside, and threatened that if I wanted to keep my life, I should obediently hand over the treasure within. Thangwit hid behind my back, her eyes. Lini whispered, "Husband, these people are so aggressive, I am afraid." Hearing my wife's distress, the fire of vanity ignited within my soul. I cast a look of utter contempt upon the Foundation establishment guardian, slowly raised my right hand toward the heavens and declared, "Since when is it your place to dictate the laws of these heavens and earth? If you are so fond of this frozen wasteland, then I shall grant you your wish." I drew a deep breath and once again invoked the illusory art of word manifesting law. Roaring silence, let all within 100 miles of this place be hushed. Should any dare to move even a muscle, I shall seal them into eternal ice that will never thaw. As the words left my lips, Qingyu, standing behind me, subtly flicked her finger. A wave of bone-chilling, freezing laws, 10 times more potent than the night before, swept across the area. The guardian, who had been about to open his mouth to spew insults, froze in place. The malevolent grin on his face was instantly encased in ice. Following him, the dozens of guards trailing behind met the same fate. In less than a second, the entire street fell into a deathly silence. Beneath the sunlight, dozens of ice sculptures in various postures appeared, hauntingly lifelike. Even the weapons held in their hands were coated in intricate crystalline frost. This soul-shaking spectacle struck terror into the hearts of the wandering cultivators watching from afar. They fled in a panic, weeping and screaming that a peerless god of slaughter had descended upon this place. Gazing at the statues frozen by my single decree, I felt an exhilarating rush, wondering to myself, could this ice control energy truly be an omnipotent cheat skill? I turned back and offered a gentle, comforting look to Qingyu. "Do not be afraid, the trash that dared to disturb your rest has been frozen." Qing widened her beautiful eyes as she looked at the rows of ice statues, revealing a look of profound adoration. She praised my technique as one that could traverse the heavens and shatter the earth, a feat no one had ever achieved. In reality, she was thinking, "Husband, your talent for exaggeration is truly unrivaled." Had this empress acted even a moment later, you would have been drowned by their spit. I adjusted my collar with effortless flair and led her toward the tavern. Jian Wuyan acted like a loyal, aging hound, clearing the path ahead of us. The wandering cultivators who had intended to surround us earlier knelt down and kowtowed, with some even wailing, "Senior Liu, please spare our lives." We begged the immortal to retract his divine power. Inside the tavern, I ordered a feast of rare delicacies unobtainable in any mortal market, even generously sharing a bowl with the small golden beast. The true dragon's remnant soul was now so terrified that not a shred of its former aura remained. It curled up humbly beside the bowl, timidly sipping the broth. His greatest ambition in life right now is to escape from these two lunatics. One of them is prone to delusions, while the other enjoys playing out elaborate dramas to commit murder. Just as we were enjoying the fine delicacies, the horizon began to shift. Several powerful streaks of light were rushing at high speed toward this town. As it turns out, reinforcements from the Lin family of Tianji City and the Medicine King Valley had arrived. They discovered that the life tokens of Mo Wuchi and the others had shattered, so they came seeking vengeance. Leading them was a law enforcement elder from the Medicine King Valley, a cultivator at the early stage of the nascent soul realm. Filled with murderous intent, he landed outside the restaurant and demanded that those inside come out to die. I was in the middle of enjoying my spirit wine. Hearing this, I felt a surge of irritation, slammed my hand on the table, and said, "Why must there always be someone disturbing my meal?" I looked at Qing and asked if she wanted to watch her husband demonstrate how to tear a nascent soul cultivator apart. Qingyu nodded with complete obedience. "Go for it, husband. You are the best." I stepped out of the restaurant and looked at the old man in the sky with a cold smile. "Old man, shouldn't you be at home waiting for death instead of running around here? If you kneel and kowtow an apology right now, I might still grant you a swift death." The nascent soul elder was so furious his beard bristled, and he immediately summoned a fire dragon, intending to raze the entire town and the restaurant to the ground. I remained perfectly calm and blew a breath of immortal energy toward the fire dragon, muttering to myself, "Extinguish, what a useless display of fireworks." Qingyu once again silently unleashed a void-shredding technique at the Earth realm level. That fire dragon, which appeared to possess peerless power, instantly detonated in midair. The flames transformed into a sky full of stardust. Then they flickered out without a trace, a truly laughable sight. The ferocious expression on the nascent soul elder's face instantly twisted into one of utter terror. He had not even seen how I made my move before the spiritual energy in his entire body dissipated. I walked through the air, feigning the posture of an invincible expert to close the distance. In truth, it was Qingyu using her divine sense to lift the soles of my feet, allowing me to fly. I arrived before the old man and patted his face with utter contempt. "I told you to kneel. Why do you insist on refusing to listen?" I then invoked the power of words following the law. With a thunderous roar, I commanded, "All of you, kneel for me." Combined with the mountain-crushing, sea-draining pressure of Qingyu's Earth Realm cultivation descending upon them, the once high and mighty nascent soul elder plummeted directly from the sky. He slammed into the muddy street, carving out a massive human-shaped crater. His entire body was pinned down, rendered utterly unable to move, could only emit wretched, blood-curdling screams. In that moment, all the cultivators surrounding the pavilion stood frozen in stunned silence. They finally realized that I, Lu Yuan, was no mere skirt chaser but a peerless expert concealing my true power while wandering the mortal realm. With an air of absolute composure, I took Thon Gwet by the hand to depart, declaring that as long as I existed in this world, no one would ever dare lay a finger on her. We shall now proceed to the grandest auction house in Tianji City, and while we are at it, we shall purge those sects that have been plotting against us from the shadows. The sensation of bringing a max-level empress to sweep through this starter village is truly unparalleled. I am already eager to see who the next soul brave enough to court death will be. Meanwhile, Than Nuit leaned against my shoulder, her face flushed with a deep crimson. The heart that had remained frozen for 1,000 years had completely thawed because of me. Even if I am but a mortal at the chi-refining stage who enjoys boasting, what of it? As long as I am to protect her, she is capable of suppressing the entire continent for my sake. Our journey of standing firmly by one another's side has only just begun. Only when I cause the entire northern region to bear the name Lu will this endeavor be truly complete. I turned my head to look at the trembling remnant soul of the true dragon and spoke, "Little dragon, watch closely. Following me is the greatest fortune of your entire existence. When I eventually attain divinity, I shall bestow upon you the position of a true dragon guardian." The true dragon's remnant soul was moved to tears, nodding incessantly for fear that I might change my mind. We sat upon a carriage pulled by the violet cloud leopard moving slowly toward the horizon. The setting sun cast long silhouettes of us looking truly divine and solemn. In the dead of night, the secluded courtyard outside Tianji City was deathly quiet. Moonlight spilled across the bluestone floor, casting it a desolate yet breathtaking glow. After the surge of absolute freezing energy, the frost that had once filled the room had long since vanished into wisps of white mist. The previously pale complexion of Chutan Yuet had now regained its radiant vitality. The layers of useless meridians used for my disguise dissipated right before my eyes. I lounged on my chair, sipping cold tea, feeling a sense of immense satisfaction deep within. My wife's illness was cured, and I remained capable of invoking the law of words at any moment. This is what one calls the perfect, godlike life of a transmigrator. Just then, Chu Tongwet softly called my name. Her star-like eyes under the moonlight were clear and captivating. She bit her lower lip gently and voiced a decision. She stated that since her meridians were now unblocked, she wished to resume her cultivation, refusing to always hide beneath my wings for protection. Even if she could only master the most basic defensive techniques, it would suffice. Should danger arise in the future, she would at least be able to intercept a blow for me. These words stirred a deep sense of protective instinct. I took her hand in concern and said, "With me here, why must you suffer the blow of a blade? However, if it is your desire to temper your body, your husband will naturally support you with all my heart." I tapped my chest with a flourish and declared, "Let us train here tonight. I shall stand guard and protect you myself." Shokingyu bowed to me with grace, then walked toward the weeping willow in the center of the courtyard. She did not take up a divine weapon, but casually snapped off a willow branch. She stood beneath the moonlight, took a deep breath, and prepared to play her part. She had originally intended to perform the clumsiest sword dance and feign a fall so that her husband, me, could rush over to catch her in a display of concern. Yet the sword aura deeply ingrained within her soul could not be suppressed. As she gripped the willow branch, her shoulders instinctively shifted, and her footsteps immediately harmonized with the ancient rhythm of the heavens and earth. A sudden, unexpected resonance of a sword echoed through the void. Shou Qingyu, who had been feigning weakness, saw her aura undergo a complete transformation. She was no longer the gentle, virtuous wife. She had become a sword immortal, looking down upon all living beings. The willow branch in her hand traced a silver arc of breathtaking perfection. There was no fluctuation of spirit energy, yet it caused the surrounding air to ripple visibly. Like a proud, solitary crane, she danced beneath the moon. Fallen leaves were caught in the wake of her sword intent, swirling in an exquisite pattern through the air. It was as if she were guiding the moonlight itself, draping it over her form like a mantle of silver silk. The sheer beauty and intensity of this sight were truly enough to topple kingdoms. At this moment, Jian Wuchen, who had been keeping watch outside, opened his eyes in terror. His violet lightning flying sword trembled violently within its case. It was not a sign of excitement, but a display of humble submission and deep-seated fear. Every piece of steel within the town now pointed toward the courtyard. Terrified, cold sweat streaming down his face, Jian Wuchen collapsed to his knees outside the gates. He assumed that I, the peerless expert, was demonstrating my sword Dao within, while I, lounging in my chair, was left completely stunned. I did not even notice as the cup of hot spirit tea spilled into my lap. Following the initial shock, my brain, long accustomed to reading web novels, began to race. I acutely grasped a terrifying oversight. How could a sickly mortal who had not even achieved the condensation of spirit energy cut through falling leaves so fluidly with a mere willow branch? This was undoubtedly a supreme sword technique capable of taking lives without the use of spirit energy. Furthermore, her expression just now had been chillingly indifferent. The way she viewed the world as if all living beings were but ants. That imperial gaze sent a shiver straight up my spine. The destruction of the Yuisha sect, the true dragon reduced to a house pet. If these events were not caused by some overpowered system I had awakened, it was because this terrifyingly powerful expert had been by my side all along. My heart began to hammer against my ribs in a frantic rhythm. Could it be that the Empress of the Nine Netherworlds never lost her cultivation base at all? Was it all merely a facade? Reflecting on these past few days, I had been incredibly arrogant, putting on a show in front of her, forcing her to endure my massages, and even dousing her with cold water to help her cool down. I felt as though I had been dancing upon the Yama's ledger of life and death, yet I forced myself to suppress the dread in my heart. Determined to test her, Chu Tongwet gracefully sheathed her sword at this moment, returning to her appearance of frailty. She realized with extreme delay that she had been a bit too exposed just now, and with a reddening face, she asked me if her swordsmanship was clumsy and ridiculous. I did not rush forward to embrace her as I usually would. Instead, I gazed at her with a profound, piercing stare that caused her smile to instantly stiffen. I stood up slowly, step by step, approaching her until I stood directly before her. I locked my eyes onto hers, articulating each word with precision. That leaf-cutting technique just now. It was called severing the azure sea, was it not? That is the third stance of the Nine Nether Godpath sword art. I am not mistaken, am I? In that instant, the pupils of Chu Tunwet contracted to their limit. The Nine Nether Godpath sword art was her unique masterpiece when she reigned as the Empress. In this world, there should be absolutely no one capable of naming that technique correctly. Her heart, tempered like iron for 10,000 years, trembled violently at that moment. In truth, I knew nothing of sword techniques. I had merely fabricated the name based on the plot. But witnessing her reaction, I knew that my suspicions had been confirmed. She was in reality far from useless. All this time she had been playing with me as if I were a mere jester. A sense of immense humiliation welled up within me, as my intelligence had been utterly trampled. It turns out that after all my frantic efforts, the one playing the fool was none other than myself. I gripped her slender chin, forcing her to meet my gaze directly. I asked her if she found it amusing to pretend to be crippled, watching me play the part of a fool. Seeing me risk my life against the entire world for her sake must have been laughable, right? My voice was raspy, heavy with both interrogation and profound heartache. Chu Thant was stunned as she looked into my reddened eyes. She had never seen me in such a state before, and the sight left her flustered. She who could have obliterated me with a single strike appeared entirely panicked in this moment. The night wind whipped our hair into disarray, stretching the tension in the air to its limit. I offered a self-deprecating laugh, released my grip, and turned away, unable to bear looking at her any longer. I said, "Since you are the peerless Empress, consider my care over these past years a meddlesome nuisance. Tomorrow at dawn, we shall part ways, each to our own path." Just as I prepared to walk out of this suffocating courtyard, Chu Tongwet suddenly lunged from behind and clung tightly to my waist. Tears streaming down her face like rain upon pear blossoms, she sobbed, "Husband, I am sorry. It was never my intention." She humbly begged me not to leave, claiming that she truly could not live without me. In that moment, the entire sky over the northern region changed hue, mirroring the depth of her sorrow. Thunder rumbled violently, and a torrential downpour descended without warning. Jian Wuyan, standing outside the door, was so terrified that his courage shattered, nearly losing his life on the spot. He sensed a terrifying wave of sorrow capable of annihilating the very world. I froze where I stood, feeling the warmth and tears radiating from behind me. So, this resolute and iron-fisted Empress had a moment of vulnerability after all. Yet a knot of indignation remained tight in my chest. I felt as though I had been deceived most cruelly. I asked her, "If you were never talentless, why did you let me venture into danger?" She sobbed, saying, "Only then could I truly see your sincerity." She confessed that she craved the feeling of being protected by me without reservation. For the past 3 years, I was the only one who loved her like an ordinary woman, rather than treating her like a high and mighty idol to be revered and feared. She would have preferred to be truly powerless, just to spend her whole life hiding behind me. Hearing these heartfelt confessions, my resolve began to soften. Yet on the surface, I let out a cold hum. Even so, you cannot continue to deceive me like this. Do you have any idea how close I came to breaking my arm while fanning you to cool you down? Qingyu laughed, pressing herself even tighter against my back. She claimed it was the most effective cooling technique she had ever witnessed in her life. The rain soaked our clothes, yet it only made the atmosphere feel all the more warm. I turned around to wipe the tears from her face. There will not be a next time. Upon hearing this, she obediently ceased her weeping, smiled, and nodded at me repeatedly. Since the truth was out, she no longer intended to hide anything. She said, "Husband, if you enjoy playing this game of word manifesting reality, from now on, this Empress shall personally handle the special effects for you. Whoever you wish to see obliterated, I shall ensure that even their soul remains shattered beyond retrieval. If you wish for snow to fall in the heavenly fortress, I shall blanket the entire northern region in white." This sense of an invincible couple, where the wife follows the husband's lead, sounded even more exhilarating. I pinched her flushed rosy cheek. That sounds much more reasonable. Tomorrow we shall go and seize the assets of the Lin family and the Medicine King Valley. It would be a total waste of resources to— And so a duo consisting of one who dared to boast and another who dared to back it up was officially formed. From that day on, a madman appeared in the northern region, shouting incantations that bent reality to his will. I turned to wipe away her tears, telling her that there must never be a next time. Hearing this, she obediently ceased her weeping, smiled brightly, and nodded fervently at me. Since her true identity had been exposed, she no longer saw a reason to conceal it. She said, "Husband, if you enjoy playing this game of manifesting your words into reality, then from now on, this Empress shall be the one to provide the effects for you from the shadows. Whomever you wish to see explode, I shall ensure their soul is scattered and their body destroyed. Should you desire snow to fall on a clear day, I shall bury the entire northern region in white." Such a dynamic where the wife follows the husband's lead to achieve supremacy sounded far more gratifying. I pinched her rosy cheek lightly and replied, "That sounds acceptable. Tomorrow we go on a raid." With a backer as formidable as ours, failing to seize the assets of the Lin family and the Medicine King Valley would be a gross waste of resources. Thus, the partnership between the one who dared to talk big and the one who dared to protect him was officially forged. From that point on, the northern region saw a madman who constantly bellowed commands into reality, and alongside him, an empress who silently annihilated entire worlds for his sake. Jian Wugen stood outside the door, listening to the laughter within, completely stunned. He thought to himself, what kind of elaborate, high-level game are these two ancestors playing? Regardless, as long as he clung firmly to their powerful thighs, his life was surely destined for greatness. The rain ceased and the clouds dispersed as moonlight once again blanketed the quiet courtyard. And our legend truly begins to unfold from this very night. I gripped Chu Qingyu's chin, asking her if she was indeed the Nine Nether Empress, and if pretending to be a cripple while watching me perform like a fool was truly that amusing. My voice was raspy, laced with intense self-mockery and heartbreak, each word grinding out from between my teeth. My fingers gripping her chin turned white from the sheer pressure of my exertion. Though my heart felt as if it were being sliced by blades, I still instinctively exerted all my self-control to restrain my strength, fearing that in my anger I might truly bring her harm. Yi Feng, a breeze swept through the courtyard, shaking loose a few withered willow leaves as time seemed to freeze entirely in that moment. Upon hearing the four words Nine Nether Empress, Chu Qingyu trembled violently. It was the first time in her life that she had experienced the emotion known as panic. This panic was far more profound than the collapse of her Dao heart. It left her feeling utterly desperate. She frantically raised her cold, jade-like hands meant for wielding blades, and, in a humble gesture, clutched at my calloused wrist. She wept, pleading for me to listen to her explanation, claiming with all her heart that she had never once considered me a fool. Those unfathomably deep eyes, so rarely seen this way, were now brimming with tears. I suddenly released my grip from her chin, stepping back in agony. It was laughable that a trash-tier chi refinement cultivator like me would attempt to use the law of manifested speech. I had even lashed out, dousing her with cold water, and used the Bodhi fan to cool the flames of her agitation. Recalling my own perceived cleverness from these past few days, I felt like a complete imbecile. The more I spoke, the more my indignation grew. She had deceived me, and I was furious at my own stupidity. The heart of Chu Qingyu felt as though it had been pierced and shredded by a razor-sharp blade. Casting all caution aside, she lunged into my embrace, clutching my waist tightly, crying out that there was no joy in any of this. She begged me not to leave, and pleaded for me to stop looking at her with such cold indifference. The Empress, who once ruled with decisive and ruthless slaughter, was now weeping like a lost, helpless girl. Her tears flowed like a fountain, instantly soaking the robes across my chest as I felt the body within my arms trembling violently. My resolve softened. I coldly commanded her to release me and explain everything clearly. She stubbornly shook her head, burying her face into my chest, choked by her own sobs. Over the past 3 years, she had offered the finest heavenly treasures to me, yet the original owner of this body, that wretched beast, had never once looked at her with genuine intent. He was nothing but an unfeeling block of wood, oblivious to her affection, even treating her as a mere tool during the Demon Clan's siege. Her heart had long since shattered, and she had sought only to use that opportunity to court death. Pretending to have lost her cultivation was merely a test to see how I would cast her aside. If I were to abandon her, she could have finally attained the state of supreme oblivion of emotions. Hearing this heart-wrenching truth, my mind went completely blank. As it turned out, she was not playing a game. She was searching for a reason to succumb to despair. An overwhelming sense of guilt and heartache instantly drowned out every trace of my anger. She lifted her tear-stained face toward me, her gaze filled with a desperate, greedy yearning, saying that when I had stood in her defense, and even shielded her from an arrow, her dead heart had begun to beat for me once more. She had grown attached to the porridge I prepared and the warmth she felt when I carried her upon my back. She feared that once the truth was laid bare, I would revert to being that cold-hearted piece of trash. Thus, she selfishly played along with my charade, simply because she did not want to lose me. This peerless empress, in her humbleness, begged me to strike her, to berate her, but never to abandon her. I was completely undone. Realizing that I was truly a cold-blooded monster, she did not treat me as a jester, but rather as her only light. I reached out firmly and, with overbearing intensity, pulled her tightly into my embrace. The Yuan of the past is dead. Now I'm yours. Whether you are a frail wife or a peerless empress, I desire only you. If you have chosen to deceive me, then you must dutifully deceive me for an entire lifetime. Su Qingyu was overcome with joy, laughing through her tears. Her smile was so radiant that even the heavens and earth seemed to dim in her presence. Moved, she stood on her tiptoes and took the initiative to press a kiss upon my lips. In that instant, a shiver raced through my body, a testament to our absolute devotion to one another. I seized the initiative and responded to this kiss with fervent passion. The moonlight, clear as water, illuminated the lovers locked in a tight embrace. In this moment, she was merely a young woman, immersed in the arms of her beloved. This kiss dissolved all barriers, binding our two hearts firmly together. I laughed with triumphant satisfaction. I have secured the most powerful cultivation account in the entire world. From this day forward, I shall enjoy this privilege for the rest of my life. Su Qingyu gave me a shy glance and replied, "Let my husband enjoy it for a lifetime." Just as the atmosphere grew cloyingly sweet, the sky erupted with a heaven-shaking, earth-shattering roar. The firmament was torn asunder by a pair of bare hands, creating a pitch-black rift 10,000 miles long. The blood-eyed demon lord screamed from within the rift, demanding I hand over the earth heart, threatening to leave this mortal husband as nothing more than a corpse. I calmly picked at my ear, gazing at the rift with profound disdain. I said to my wife, "The voice of this fool is so loud that it is an eyesore to me." Su Qingyu kissed my cheek tenderly and told her husband to wait here for a moment. Her gaze turned toward the sky, transformed. "Wait here while I go sever his tongue, then I shall return to attend to you, my husband." Before the eyes of all, I forced a demon lord at the half-step tribulation stage to kneel and beg my wife for forgiveness. Seeing this, everyone mocked me as a mere 7th stage chi-refining trash living off his wife, a man ignorant of the dangers of this world, but they knew nothing. My wife is no cripple who lost her cultivation. She is the Nether Empress, an account at the max level whose sword can seal the heavens and suppress the eternal river of time. In my past life, this wicked demon lord viewed me as nothing more than an ant, crushing my soul at his whim. Now, reborn, I have not only become the most cherished husband of the Empress, but I am also determined to witness, as the apocalypse descends, how my wife protects our home. I shall never forget the scene from my past life where her very essence shattered to save me. At that moment, I swore that in this life, I would ensure she becomes the happiest person in existence. This demon lord has descended upon the skies of Tianji City, bringing with him a 10,000-mile rift. He declares that he will tear me, a mere mortal, to pieces and seize my wife's earth core. Only days ago, I held my wife's hand and felt a warmth I had never known before. Facing this pitch-black demonic energy that shrouded the heavens, I did not even blink. For I know that the moment of true invincibility for us has only just begun. Watch as I leverage my position to make the entire cultivation world bow and acknowledge our supremacy. For suddenly a 10,000-mile crack tore open across the sky of Tianji City, a spatial rift, pitch black like the eye of a primordial beast staring down at this world. Demonic energy surged like ink, cascading down from the 9th heaven like a dark waterfall, carrying the pressure of a half-step tribulation stage expert. In this instant, that terrifying pressure fell like a physical mountain, weighing relentlessly upon the millions of cultivators and mortals within Tianji City. Countless low-level cultivators in the city could not withstand this contemptuous force. Their knees turned to water, and in despair they collapsed to the ground, their very breath stagnating in their lungs, as the entire city plunged into a panic of unprecedented apocalyptic proportions. People cried out in terror, proclaiming that the Northern Territory was truly finished this time. The blood-eyed demon lord appeared within the rift, his massive blood-red shadow looming over all. Those demonic eyes, resembling moons of blood, locked precisely onto our small courtyard. He laughed with arrogant madness, demanding that my wife surrender the 9 nether earth core, threatening that if she refused, he would slaughter the entire city and tear her husband, me, into pieces. These vicious words echoed across the sky, plunging the masses into despair. Yet sitting in the courtyard, I was far from panicked. In fact, I wanted to laugh. I know better than anyone how truly terrifying the seemingly fragile woman in my arms actually is. With absolute composure, I brought out a rattan chair and placed it in the center of the yard. Amidst the demon lord's shocked gaze, I lounged upon it, casually lifting a cup of tea to take a slow, indifferent sip. I said, "My wife, that crow screeching in the sky is becoming quite a nuisance. Not only is he disrupting our time together, but he even dares to threaten your husband. Go and strike him down with one decisive blow, and while you're at it, show the world exactly who you are. Since my identity is already exposed, I might as well embrace the life of a kept man to the fullest." Upon hearing this brazen demand, Su Qingyu merely smiled. In that mesmerizing, world-toppling smile, there hid a trace of killing intent, dangerous to the extreme. She bowed gently toward me and replied, "Your servant obeys." The very next second, she turned to face the heavens, her aura undergoing an instantaneous, drastic transformation. The primordial innocent earth body that had lain dormant for 3 years erupted like a raging volcano. The heavens and earth suddenly resonated with the magnificent, ancient sounds of the great Tao. It was as if the laws of this world were humbling themselves to welcome their true master. Su Qingyu lifted her jade feet, stepping into the void with effortless grace. A brilliant dark gold lotus flower of the great Tao bloomed beneath her feet. With that step, the simple robes she wore dissolved into stardust, replaced by an imposing and ornate set of dark crimson imperial armor. Adorned with the motif of a nine-nether divine phoenix, her imperial robes billowed in the wind, radiating absolute majesty. Her 3,000 strands of ink-black hair flowed behind her as a purple-gold imperial crown coalesced upon her head. With her second step, she was already suspended high above the city. That imperial aura caused the demon lord's pressure to vanish like snow under a scorching sun. With a sharp hiss, the pitch-black demonic energy dissipated into nothingness. Within the city, millions of cultivators looked up in shock at the invincible figure of the Empress. Someone cried out, "The Nine-Nether Empress is not useless at all. On the contrary, she has grown even stronger. This imperial pressure suppressing the ages is even more terrifying than in her prime. 3 years ago, the land did not abandon us. The guardian deity of the northern region has truly returned." Countless cultivators wept with emotion, bowing frantically toward the sky, while the blood-eyed demon lord trembled in the rift. The arrogant sneer on his face had completely frozen over. He could sense a level of law that transcended the limits of heaven and earth, causing his demonic soul to shudder. In a state of terror, he roared, "How can you have stepped into that supreme realm?" Finally realizing he had not kicked a mere iron plate but a world-ruling sovereign, this once arrogant demon lord desperately burned his demonic blood to make his escape. He turned and fled frantically into the depths of the 10,000-mile rift. There was no flicker of emotion in Qingyu's eyes. Only pure, unadulterated killing intent remained as she stated. "Those who dare declare they will tear my husband apart shall not be allowed to leave behind even a trace of their divine soul." She slowly raised her right hand. Without using a magical artifact or complex seals, she simply brought her fingers together. With a calm, fluid motion, she swung her index and middle fingers forward, unleashing the legendary sword strike known as Severing the Boundless Sea. As a fingertip was quietly drawn through the air, a sword aura of pure, brilliant gold instantly engulfed the entire northern region. The pitch-black demonic energy that had once veiled the heavens crumbled before this sword light like brittle paper. Time and space lost all meaning before the path of this strike. Just as the blood-eyed demon lord prepared to flee into the demon realm portal, his body froze in a grotesque manner. He struggled to lower his head to look at his own impenetrable demonic form, where a single golden thread had appeared. Before he could even let out a scream, he shattered into a radiant rain of golden light. A dignified demon lord had his body and soul obliterated. Even his chance at reincarnation was completely severed by that blade. The sword light did not diminish in momentum, striking the demon realm portal with overwhelming dominance. The rift, which had plagued the cultivation world for 10,000 years, emitted a groan of unbearable strain, until it was finally stitched shut and completely sealed by the formidable rules of the Emperor Realm. One strike to slay the demon lord, one strike to seal the demon realm. The frost chilled the 14 provinces. The entire heavenly secret city fell into a deathly silence, so absolute that the falling of a needle could be heard. Everyone present lost the ability to speak in the face of such invincible might. Su Qingyu stood proudly above the 9 heavens, her majestic aura sweeping across the entire continent as her cold, authoritative voice echoed into every corner. She declared to the entire cultivation world that the Nine-Nether Empress had returned. This single statement struck terror into the hearts of the old ancestors who had been waiting for the opportunity to profit from the chaos. Her gaze slowly swept across the land, carrying a killing intent capable of annihilating divine souls. She demanded to know who, in the last 3 years, had dared to insult her husband behind his back, and declared that those who had coveted her underground palace from the shadows must settle their debts at this very moment. She publicly issued a decree proclaiming my importance to her before the entire world. She declared that I am the person she loves most in this life, and the male master of the underground palace. From this day forward, to see me is to see the Empress. Who would dare show even a sliver of disrespect toward me? To even harm a single hair on my head would result in the slaughter of one's entire clan, the extermination of 9 generations, and the casting of their souls into the nether flames, never to be reincarnated and forced to endure eternal torment. As the decree descended, millions of cultivators throughout the city fell to their knees in unison. The cheers welcoming the Empress's return surged like a tidal wave, shaking the very heavens and the earth. Outside the courtyard, Jian Wushan, who had just been startled back to consciousness, began to kowtow frantically. He wept, declaring that serving as a carriage driver for the Empress's husband was the greatest fortune of his sect, while I lounged on a rattan chair sipping tea, and let out a sigh of profound satisfaction. I thought to myself that the soft rice personally served to my mouth by the Nine-Nether Empress was truly exquisite. As I gazed at my invincible wife in the sky, shielding me from all above, I began to wonder, to be carried by such a supreme expert is an experience that resonates even to the depths of my soul. From this day forward, the northern region shall know only one mortal emperor, the most arrogant and unchecked of them all. This is the pinnacle of my path, the divine art of being a kept man with unmatched strength. I, Lu Yuan, have mastered it. I gaze up at my peerless wife in the heavens, shielding me beneath her shadow. While I stand alone, I find myself already contemplating which sect I should infiltrate next to seek further sustenance. The sensation of being sheltered by an absolute powerhouse is truly exhilarating to the very core of my soul. From this moment on, the northern region will recognize only one mortal emperor defined by his audacity, Lu Yuan.